What's up, everybody? Welcome to the GameOverGreggy Show. I am one of your hosts, Greg Miller, alongside the producer/seducer, Nick Scarpino.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, how are you?
Good, Greg. How are you?
I'm good.
Fantastic.
It's been a long day in L.A.
It's been a great day in L.A.
I agree.
Every day in L.A. is a great day in L.A.
You love L.A. You wish we could move
this
here.
place, man. Are you kidding me? It's always hot, and that's it.
That's why you're not a member of Team Fat. That would be a drawback for anybody else.
No, if we move down here, when we move down here, I'm going to stay optimistic about this. When we move down here, we are all getting super in shape.
Nope, not even remotely on
I've
the
been
board.
here a while, and I'm still not super. I have a shape, it's just not in.
You have the jelly bean shape.
Yeah,
I'm a fan of that one. I use that a lot. Over there, the pride of Long Island, Colin Moriarty.
Go Isles.
Go Islanders.
It's good to
indeed.
it's good to be here with you, Greg.
It's good to be here with you, Colin.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. It's always my honor to have you sit on a podcast with me. Over here, the pure one, Tim Gettys.
Let Tim host.
And then across the table from us, we're in his bat cave. We're in Kevin Smith's house. This is really weird. How you doing, Kevin Smith?
How are you?
I'm excellent.
Good.
The producer/seducer that's tremendous. I mean, it's one of those things. Like every once in a while, you have an idea. You hear somebody say something. You're like, has that been said before? And you run to the internet and do a quick Google search.
Yeah.
I doubt anyone's ever put that together.
You should Google it. Good things come up. I'll tell you that much.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
And is
It's
it all in
this man.
relation to you?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes,
We had
it's
it
all
going
in
for a
relation
while
to
where
me.
if you put Nick's name into Google, like the first autofill was cocaine, and I was like, we're doing the Lord's work.
No, it was cocaine, then scumbag, then producer/seducer. Now, thankfully, due to a marketing campaign of my own, it's just producer/seducer.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you are listening to the MP3, then nothing. It's the normal MP3. It's the GameOverGreggy show for you. If you're watching on YouTube, I've put up just an image. That's because we're in Kevin Smith's house. It's top secret.
They said, "Hey, can we set up cameras?" And I was like, "God, no." So
You said it
responsible
very
for that.
sweetly, though. You were like, can we not?
Yeah,
and then you
I
blinked at me a couple times, and I was like, I can't say no to Kevin Smith's face.
I
Are
have
you
a
kidding me?
doe-eyed way of passing that
It's
across.
amazing.
That kind of, but yeah, I was unfortunately I was not prepared to
No,
sit around.
it doesn't matter. I'm just explaining for these YouTube kids at home. They're at home tapping the screen.
Yeah,
wondering
why isn't
nothing's
it moving? People
Yeah,
talking.
exactly.
What the
These
fuck
kids.
is this old-timey
This
radio?
is garbage. I hate this crap. Ladies and gentlemen, if you didn't know, you're listening to the Game Over Greggy Show. The idea is simple. Each and every week, 4, sometimes 5 best friends gather around this table, each bringing a random topic of discussion for your amusement. If you like that, the show goes live on patreon.com/kindafunny each and every Friday as an MP3 and a video. Then if you don't want to give us any money, we totally understand. You can go to youtube.com/kindafunny Monday through Thursday, have it broken out topic by topic before we post the entire show for your amusement.
And by now, it's January, so it is definitely going to be on SoundCloud and iTunes, and we can all celebrate and have
Lies.
fun
These are
together.
just lies that you're telling the world,
no,
Tim.
No, it's happening.
It-
Guarantee
it's-
it. Promise. I promised Kevin Smith. I wouldn't let him.
It sounds like you boys are branching out this year.
See, now that's the thing, Kevin Smith. On the Game Over Greggy Show, tradition dictates that the guest goes first. But we're putting this up with you. We're doing this crossover thing with you and your podcast series. We need to get to brass tacks and let you know, break it to you because you're one of the best friends. We came to tell you to your face. We all quit our jobs.
How really?
All 4 of us have left lucrative careers at IGN to go just do kind of funny things.
What now? Of course, I always branch independent. I always applaud anyone who branches out and do something independently and whatnot instead of working for the quote unquote man.
The man.
But you know, in my experience, the man was never that bad at IGN.
No. We love IGN. Yeah.
What happened? Why quit the jobs and to do the thing as opposed to doing them simultaneously?
Sure, we had been doing them simultaneously for a while, and that was really starting to kill us.
Really?
Yeah.
And so
it was-
now you guys are like, I want to pot commit. Like,
Yeah.
We're teetering, and we want to teeter to the other side.
It's one of those things. It's the safe choice is obviously to stay with IGN and be there. I mean, they've been great to us. I had been there 8 years. Nick had been there 9. Colin had been there 8. Tim is a baby. He's
Almost
only
5.
Almost 5. Sorry. So you know what I
Still,
mean.
that's
And
an internet lifetime. right
Exactly.
there.
Oh, and that's the whole thing. They've been a face, and they've let me rise up to become one of their dominant personalities, and they've given me so much. But we started to feel like, all right, what's next for all of us, let alone just me? You know what I mean? And the success we've seen with making Kind of Funny and the fun we have creating that content, that was getting to the point where to continue to invest in that would start to detract from IGN, and it wouldn't be fair to them for everything they've done for us.
Now, do you guys are you independently wealthy enough to walk away from?
We will see.
Kinda. We're seeing about that. I feel
We're
like
actually
we're
selling
in an
Tim's
okay
body.
place.
Is that what?
Yeah,
it
we're
is?
going to start selling. He doesn't know that yet, but we're going to
How
start selling
many
his
people
body
are
tonight.
married here?
Just
Anybody?
him.
You're
Just
the
me.
okay.
Yeah.
And your wife was never like, "Don't do this."
She went through phases. We'll say.
Right.
Largely, she was terrified and is still in that phase.
Scary, yeah.
But she, it's one of those things where she sees us get super excited, right? And she hasn't seen that. And we're not knocking IGN. IGN's a great place to come into work every day. But after I've been there 9 years.
Right.
So after 9 years at a place, you start to lose that sort of shimmer, and she finally started seeing it again in me, which is weird to say, and kind of just gave me the nod. Like, do it.
Nice.
Try it. Why not?
All right. Well,
What's the worst that can happen, right? You might
that is
end
a
up sleeping
fucking
outside Kevin
life
Smith's house.
partner. Yeah,
she's
and,
awesome.
oh my god, if that's on the list, that's not bad. Sleeping outside this house, like I'm kind of kind-hearted, so I would never be like, get this fucking homeless person out of here. Particularly if I was just like, that homeless person was once in my house recording a podcast the moment before that dude changed his life and then went homeless. So let him fucking sleep there. Like, here's an extra Justice League blanket. That is an excellent life partner. Somebody who's like, you know what? I could smell that you're not fucking happy where you are right now. And so if you got to make a move, make a move. The rest of you guys just have the freedom to make the move. Right?
Well, yeah, Colin and I each have a girlfriend, and we live together in next bedrooms that are next to each other, and then the third bedroom is our podcast studio and everything else we do there for filming. So both of our partners have been super supportive as well.
Yeah, Cheryl, my girlfriend, has been awesome about it. I mean, there's some trepidation, of course, but she always wants me to just do what makes me happy. And,
totally.
And
but to be fair, there's no, at the end of the day, she could be like, well, that's your problem. Goodbye forever.
Right.
This guy, he's got, in order for that to happen, they got to go to court and shit like
Absolutely.
that.
It's like,
so a girlfriend or somebody who's not like fucking, and I'm not putting down somebody who's not married, but the freedom of not being married is the freedom to be like, I support you in everything you do, but if this motherfucker blows their life up, I get out of here fast.
Absolutely. I mean, we can dodge the litigious nature of the whole situation. But yeah, she's been great, and we owe a great deal to IGN. I mean, they gave us all of our opportunities. We'll never forget that. We'll never forget who paid our bills for many years and allow us to rise to F-list internet prominence.
Right.
But it is
a good place. Right?
But we're really excited and honored that a lot of our people from IGN, the listeners of Podcast Beyond and all these things that we do are coming with us and are excited, I think.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, they're the whole reason. I mean, the big movement for us and the change was when we launched the Patreon, and when we rebranded as Kind of Funny and launched the Patreon 3 months ago, and the outpouring of support there was the one. We looked at each other like, huh.
We could be internet superstars if we try.
Yeah, we believe that we will be internet superstars when we hit 100,000 views.
I am fucking shocked that Kind of Funny wasn't taken.
Isn't that crazy?
That is nuts.
That is nuts to me.
That's one of those things that, like producer/seducer, you're like, that's not taken already? You didn't steal that from like fucking Gallagher or something?
Yeah.
Like, I must have heard that. And then you're like, no, I didn't hear that before at all.
There is a woman in the suburbs of Chicago who has the Kind of Funny Twitter.
Okay.
And she doesn't, I'm not saying doesn't use it correctly. She's just not very active on the Twitter. She doesn't seem to get it. So when I had to follow this woman, then tweet her to follow me back, then try to explain to her how to use DMs, then go into the DMs and be like, I'm launching this business. Is it possible for us to trade names? She's like, no, I like this. This is an inside joke between me and my friend. I'd like to keep it. I've had it for years. And I'm like, I totally get that. But wouldn't a better inside joke be the time 4 idiots on the internet offered you a few $1,000s for your name? And she said, this sounds like a scam. Please stop talking to me. And I said, no, it's not a scam. Please don't go. I'm like, I'm verified and you can look at me and like, here's links to everything. She's like, I'll have to think about this. And then she started publicly tweeting. She's like, has anybody ever heard of someone coming through and trying to buy your Twitter name? And then she'd be like, thank goodness my bro is dating a lawyer. And I'm like, oh God.
Oh my. You became like the conversation for a week.
Totally.
You were there, Bill Cosby, Ebola, ISIS. Like, that's what they talked about. Like, yeah, what does
That's
that
exactly
mean?
how we think
Yeah.
of Greg, by the way.
All the time.
It's Bill
Living.
Cosby and Ebola.
Yeah, you know what? As long as you're making headlines, you're doing it right, is what I like to think. So yeah, I like to think every so often she sees something happen now. She's like, I could have had a few $1,000s off these idiots.
It was funny too because the we had to buy the Kind of Funny URL,
Right.
but I think it was open on. Did we get it on YouTube? Like,
Yeah.
it was just open on YouTube.
Yeah.
How much was the URL, just out of curiosity?
Like, not,
$1,000.
That is not bad.
No, not at all.
That's really
We would have
not
paid
bad.
more for it.
Yeah.
don't
yeah.
see
But
it. They can't come now, right? We have
Someone out there is
contracts.
like,
It's all
damn
the
it.
same.
We're not very good about renewals. So
Oh,
we
okay.
gotta stay on top of that.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
well, yeah, we have too many emails.
And so the rebranding, going from GameOverGreggy, the idea is like, well, it's not one person.
100%. That was the big thing.
And that's bold in and of itself too, because that is like, all right, we got something that works. Now we're stepping away and building something else. But the time to do it is now, when you've got more eyeballs and earballs than I guess you anticipated.
Yeah,
like you've been able to take something fun at the job and turn it into a potential career. It's within reach, within grasp, and you're like, well, fuck it. If not now, fucking when?
Yeah, that was the thing we talked about. Is we could have stuck in Ben GameOverGreggy and we could have blown up to 200,000 followers, and then it gets really hard to. All right, now let's change it, and then you have more people pissed off. Whereas this time we had this really core group. Like I always talk about it, right? Like the number we have on YouTube right now, or right before we flip the switch on the 5th, right? Those are the ride or die motherfuckers. Those are the kids who they want to hear Colin and I talk about video games, and for the longest time we couldn't on our YouTube channel because we worked at IGN. And that was the agreement, right? Like, no, you talk about video games here, so give us that content. We're like, that makes sense. Right. So the people who actually came to watch Colin and I talk about ants, or Tim talk about the Disney princesses he wants to fuck, it's like
there's a lot of them.
You are the good kids. Thank you for sticking it out with us.
How many princesses are there?
Oh God,
there's plenty. Let me tell you about this, Kevin.
Is there over 20? Are there over 20 princesses?
There's not 20. No, not officially.
And so, of that list, you've narrowed. You're like, not all of them. Some
definitely not all of them.
Give them the top
majority. Top 3.
No, I'm more curious in who doesn't make the list at all.
Who doesn't make the list?
Who is the Kevin Smith? What?
Yeah,
why?
Wait, how does Mulan not make the list?
Officially, is a princess, but Mulan doesn't make the list.
She was hot.
She fucking led an army, man, and she passed as a dude, so you get the strange going on.
That's true.
She puts on the armor.
You won me over,
and
Kevin.
suddenly,
all right, all the princesses are on the list now.
Just saying, fair enough.
So then, since I've foregone letting you go first, the topic I want to bring to the table is you've struck out on your own before.
And I've struck out, period.
Yeah, well,
Many
sure.
times.
What did you wish you knew when you went out on your own and you said goodbye? Steady jobs and things like paychecks and health insurance somebody else pays for and security.
Honestly,
what have we done?
There was only one thing. Like I don't have regrets because, and you guys won't either, because it was untenable to remain in the situation you were, because your appetites and your aspirations have grown larger. And so now is the time. It's an entrepreneurial time in this business where people can make bold moves like what you're doing right now and actually make a career of it. But for me, the thing that I learned when I left Weinstein Company and Miramax, they were the Weinstein brothers, Harvey and Bob, were kind of my padrinos for a long time, 12 years running and shit. All my art was sponsored by them. So part of that was you got this sweet overall deal to run your office and stuff, just a big chunk of money that they're like, here, this is to run your office. They didn't account for it. You didn't have to sit there and be like, this is where we spent it and stuff. Shit like that went away, and then right away you were like, oh wow, that was a lot of money to pay dopey bills like a staff and stuff like that. So naturally I noticed things like that, which is what you'll notice, the pinch of the exact same situation, but my God, we had paying jobs and now we don't.
Comic-Con was a lot cheaper when we expensed everything.
Bingo. But the thing that I saw, this isn't a really practical piece of advice, but the thing that I saw years later after a move was, wow, so much of what I did leaned on where I was. As much, I was never fucking I'm everything and the Weinsteins are nothing. No, I was always very appreciative of the fact that Harvey and Bob had kind of bought Clerks and kept making movies with me and stuff. But then simple things like getting into the Cannes Film Festival, just like you said, to a degree of you can't expense everything now at Comic-Con. Getting into Cannes was a breeze when, Harvey had the movies. And then when Harvey wasn't involved, it's did you guys get my email? So there were definitely things that I realized, shit, that was easier back then. But it was never man, I wish I fucking had that again, or I wish I could change that in the present to look more like the past, because that was a moment. Just like IGN was your moment. Brought you all together, fucking introduced you, and taught you what you dream about. The thing that you were going to change your life for, worth going after for the rest of your fucking life. From your job to a fucking career. And so, you'll always love the place, and with distance from it, you'll be like, oh, wow, so much of who I am and what we're doing has everything to do with that. It's part of your DNA. So it's not. I'm sorry, it's not practical advice where it's just like, yeah, that'll help us make our business better. But it is something that, like right now, human beings are all about survival. So right now, you're making a big move, and part of that survival is about moving forward as fast as you fucking can and not looking back. When you're safe about 2 years from now, 3 years from now, you get your feet on the ground, and you're not worried about building as much as maintaining, then you'll be able to look back and be like, holy shit, that was the fucking glory year. That was the glory days, fucking salad days, like the halcyon moment when everything was, not only did we all meet and we were all working, but somebody else was fucking paying the bills and shit like that. But it's worth sacrificing because now you're captains of your own destiny. I mean, it's a very small thing, and these are very first world kind of issues. But like you talked about, like we want to be able to talk about podcasts or video games, but you know we had to do it exclusively there. Blah blah blah. Now you have the freedom to do whatever the fuck you want.
YouTube.com/kindoffunnygames. Come subscribe.
Exactly. And there'll be that aspect now all the time.
The panhandling, the
Shilling.
the
shilling.
shameless self-promotion. Thankfully, I got over that. We're really good at that. Have we told you about kindoffunny.com/store?
And at least you're doing it on your behalf. You know what I'm saying? Like if you weren't already doing the panhandling for IGN, you would eventually be. But I'm sure you have to anyway.
Yeah, we were. Well, I mean, it's not even, you make so many... We make so much content at IGN, right? So when Podcast Beyond goes up, I promote that, and Up at Noon goes up in this conversation, and then don't forget to get your Beyond TV. Like, we're used to it, and our audiences too, right? Because our audience, I always say, if you're listening to the show, you're one of our best friends. You know me better than my family does, because we have conversations here that aren't just, what's the weather like in Chicago,
Absolutely
Dad?
fucking true.
Awesome.
Yeah,
it's like,
so goddamn
that's
true.
how this whole thing works, right? That we're all one giant community together, and they get that it's not like we're sitting there counting millions of dollars. We're just like, oh, here's that T-shirt you always talk about in the comments you want to see, and that's how you get it.
I mean, this may be a very me specific thing, but it may apply as well, and maybe it doesn't apply because you now have kind of branded into a group more than anything else. But there was a certain point where all I used to do was one thing for a living. Like that was my job to make movies, as my career, and it was awesome to make movies. And then I realized I got to do that, but there were other things I wanted to do too, like write comic books or fucking later on podcasts or stand on a stage and fucking do Q&A and shit like that. So as I started like branching out or what do they call it, diversifying the portfolio, so to speak, there was a bunch of things. It wasn't just one thing anymore. And then there was a certain moment, I don't know how else to describe it, but there was a certain moment where I realized, oh my God, because of all these things, I am no longer just a director. Like my job is to be Kevin Smith. And it's not a job. That's awesome. My career now is being Kevin Smith. However, a job is something you can end and walk away from and take a holiday from or quit, as you guys just did. Once you become the business, that's it. Yeah. Fucking until you're in the grave or until you want to do something else, this is the path you've chosen, and this is probably the best piece of advice I can pass off because it helps me whenever I'm standing somewhere where I'm like, "Fuck, this is where I am right now." It always helps, and you'd rather say it to yourself than some other motherfucker say it because they say it, then you want to punch them. But this is what you need to say. You wanted this, like. Everything that happens from this moment forward, you wanted this. So the highs, when you earn them, you're like, fuck, I wanted this and I was right. But the lows, when you're like, Jesus Christ, that's what will give you strength. Like you wanted this, and it'll take you back to the moment. It won't make you sit there and go like, I want to meet the dumb jackass who wanted this and fucking put my fucking dick in his mouth and tell him stay at IGN. It'll make you even more steely in your decision.
Your resolve,
you're like,
right?
Your resolve is kind of more tightened because you're like, oh yeah, I remember now. Yeah. Like you won't bitch. It's a very first world temptation to complain, even when we're making our dreams come true. It's a very American thing. But at the same time, it's very. You can find strength and resolve just knowing that this is what you wanted, good or bad, man. It's like there's many times over the course of the last few years where I'm like, fuck. How did I get here? And then I'm like, oh yeah, this is what I wanted.
Yeah,
you wanted
this.
Yeah.
Well, it reminds me. A couple days ago, we did Hot Pepper Gaming. We filmed it. Are you familiar with this? Where you review a video game, but you also review a habanero pepper at the same time. So you eat the pepper, and then you have to try to get through this review, and then you score them all at the end. And I've done it before, and this time was way worse. And then Colin did it for the first time. And the misery he was in at the end, and how good he was on camera, I immediately texted Tim and said, Colin just became a YouTuber. And it's because it's like before Colin has been a writer, an editor, this podcast host. And I think now that we're making this jump, you see him embracing it the same way. So even though he hated his life right then and there, he's along for the ride.
Yeah, let me just tell you, Kevin, about Hot Pepper Gaming. Just don't do it.
It just sounds so fucking. I mean, it made me feel old the moment you explained it, because I was just like, man, I'm 44, aren't I? Because I don't know anybody my age who's just like, let's Hot Pepper game. Like, most people are just content to be like, let's just game, man. But there's someone out there, and it's always youth, that's just like, this needs an edge. You know what that edge is? We're going to combine eating a hot pepper with reviewing a game. It's just... It seems very young. It's like, boy, you guys are multitasking like motherfuckers.
It's a stroke. I mean, I said like I kid, of course, because I think it's a stroke of genius.
It's brilliant.
But oh my god, like a habanero and trying to.
So is the idea that you eat it and then you're trying to review before what? You take a drink or something?
Yeah.
You have
can't
like
drink
3
the milk
minutes
till you finish your review. Yeah.
You can't drink what?
Milk.
They have a
Milk
cup of
inside.
milk there?
Yeah,
you can drink milk, and it's
Why is milk neutralized?
Yeah, milk
it
knocks
actually
out
works.
the heat. Yeah.
It actually works very well.
Not
Really?
instantly, but I mean, it'll definitely lessen the pain you're in because you are in a lot of pain.
So you eat it cooked, raw?
Oh, just a raw habanero, just right into it, just bite into it,
and for
one bite?
No, you eat the whole thing, and I was looking this up on the Scoville chart or whatever of heat. A jalapeno is like 5,000 units, and a habanero is 300,000 units.
I mean, isn't it one of those things that it could kill some people?
Yeah, it said if you have stomach problems not to do it, and luckily Colin has a million stomach problems.
Yeah, I have ulcers and like just bowel issues, and I definitely felt it. Was definitely a little scared at moments.
You're like, why am I doing this?
But we wanted to do it because it was, I think, would make our people laugh.
Right.
But I couldn't believe Greg did it again, because I was like, I'm never doing that again. But I'm glad that it was funny and that we got it on camera, that we were actually filming. I was afraid that maybe we didn't actually get it.
Right.
Something terrible would happen, like where I just went through all this pain and misery for, more than a day, because it comes out the other end as well.
True. You gotta shoot that as well.
Yeah,
no, there's
no. But I
shooting
did
that
text
one.
them. I did
GoPros
text
in
them
there?
on a group text saying it's happening.
Yeah, I love that doing dumb things on camera is the future. And I feel like it's not even the future anymore. It's been the last couple of years.
It is.
He made it now.
But it's the why it's the perfect measurement of unit of time for wasting. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't. It's not a movie. 90 minutes to 2 hours is a big fucking commitment. Now, in a world where everything has shrunk in terms of like, we got a lot more things to pay attention to. A movie is a thing you do later, or unless you do professional.
Movies are an event. That's a thing.
It
It's
really
still like
is.
date night.
It's
You're
become
doing
a date
something.
night thing.
Yeah.
I will
so
say-
if you're sitting around, you just want to waste some time. You want to look at some content. Half an hour sitcom might be a little too much too, man. It's YouTube is the perfect choice because you can watch something. Fucking 4 minutes, you're like, oh my god. My big, you know what? I got my topic coming up. Okay. We'll go to it, but I knew you want to say something before. I was just going to launch into something.
Look at you!
Save it.
I'm not. You might have a host. You have a hosting position in this podcast world. Sometimes you know what you do. You know how to transition. Look at you.
He's segueing.
But I
That's
know I heard somebody wanting to.
No, I was going to say this. You mentioned, you are ultimately responsible for your own success or failure, right? Which is part of the reason of wanting to own your own thing, right? But I will say you are in part a little responsible, and here's why. About 2 years ago, you were at VidCon.
Yes.
And I heard you speak for the first time on a panel, and I'm paraphrasing. You said something to the extent of, there is no barrier to entry to create and distribute your own art.
Yeah.
And that was a kind of an aha moment for me, where I was like, I have been kind of creating content or art, however you want to call it, probably more on the content side in my case, for someone else because they had that distribution platform. And then it dawned on me, if you just start something small, 2 years from now, it might be the thing that you can
It's
kind of move forward
patience.
with.
It just requires patience, diligence. Yeah, a little bit of panhandling where, subscribe.
Mm-hmm.
But it's you get there, and you'll get there with somebody else because they've got more eyeballs on them at the moment. But you're making the choice to kind of branch at the right time. You've built enough audience where you can make a transition over here and then continue to build without having to tell everybody we used to be this, but now we're this. But more importantly, man, you're just you know what? It's great working for IGN. but it's amazing working for ourselves.
Right.
And, you know, that is this generation. It's an insanely entrepreneurial generation that is you know, I read a New York Times article last year. It said this is the first generation in America in maybe, 100 years where people aren't trying to tell their kids, go to college, you know, get a college degree and then find a good job. Parents are starting to tell their kids, do what you love.
Yeah.
Like, find out what you love and fucking try to get paid for it.
Well, I always talk about it when you meet somebody, like, you know, the first time I met Aisha Tyler, like, we saw it in each other that we had that kindred connection of hustle. You know what I mean? Like, we just go and do things, and you do it, and you make it happen. And it's the same thing when we'll try to get together for anything. Like, we each have a million things going on, right? We've talked about it on her show before. And it's just like, that's what it's about. And I think if you can see that in a child, you know what I mean? I think about it all the time. Like, I would be drawing comics, and if I wasn't drawing comics, I was, you know, making stupid Saturday Night Live shows in the basement that were terrible. But you know what I mean? Like, my parents saw it and encouraged that and fostered that and gave me that. You know, you can do anything you put your mind to, kind of thing.
Wow, man. See, my parents, they weren't discouraging parents by any stretch of the imagination, but we didn't come from that world of like, yeah, that's cool. If you put your mind to it, you could do anything you want.
Yeah.
It was like, that looks fun, but, you know, make sure you get a
Be a
fucking
banker.
job. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Banker. What
Yeah.
the fuck? That was aiming high. It was like, be a busboy, be a waiter. That was the big, like, I remember my parents were like, your brother has been a waiter for years, and he's, you know, risen really high in the ranks at this one restaurant in town. So, like, that's what you should shoot for.
Right.
Because we didn't have, like, a profession in our family. The old man worked at the post office canceling stamps, so he wasn't like, come here. Like, he was,
I love my
stay the
life.
fuck yeah. He
Yeah.
was like, oh, my God, kill yourself before you do this. So, you know, they were just like, get a job. Like,
Yeah.
there was no, and even, like, we're in a place now where you could tell a 15-year-old kid, take their fucking smartphone, go shoot a feature, and there's a good chance that you may turn in that person, that girl, boy, may turn in something fucking amazing. Actually, winds up getting played and stuff. It's no longer a stretch of the imagination.
That's what I tell everybody. You know what I mean? Like, people ask me how I got started, and the thing I always say is that in the 4th grade, there was an issue of Game Pro, and on the cover was Maximum Carnage, and on the inside was The Death and Return of Superman. And I read it cover to cover for an entire month, and it finally dawned on me somebody got paid to write all the words.
Right.
So I went into the kitchen. I'm like, Mom, I know what I'm gonna do with my life. And she's like, what? I'm like, I'm gonna write about video games. And I always say, to her credit, she was like, okay, how are we gonna make that happen? And like, that set me on this path to go to journalism school and get this degree and come out and do all these different things. And now I'm like, you know, that's a dated thing. Now do it. Be doing it right now. Be blogging. Be doing your own podcast. Make your own YouTube videos. It doesn't matter if nobody watches them or downloads them. You're getting good at it so that when you have your shot to swing the bat, you hit a home run.
But see how it changes from generation to generation. I was born 70. What year were you born?
83.
So you come from a generation of parents who are like, yeah, you could do this sort of thing. Whereas our parents were like, you know, get a job or
Yeah.
go to college or something like that. And like, there was nobody in our world to like to point to, there was no examples of people. I could point to like a Richard Linklater. I'm like, this guy made this movie in Austin, Texas, and fucking, you know, it got picked up and it's playing in art houses. But that, you were still speaking Martian. You know, this was still kind of indie film was more of a hobby medium to a lot of people and stuff. So you couldn't find a lot of support because there wasn't a lot of understanding where we were. If I'd grown up in like Los Angeles or New York City or, you know, fucking Austin, Texas, then you've got like college communities and creative folks who are like, oh yeah, making a feature, blah, blah, blah. But in our world where I was from, you didn't have that.
It's always important to have the examples.
Yeah. And for me, that example was Richard Linklater.
Yeah.
Like him, Hal Hartley was another one. He'd made movies in Long Island. Even Spike Lee's flicks. Those were the people who had kind of, Jim Jarmusch, made stuff that I'm like, all right, well, they're not from Hollywood or this place.
Yeah.
They're doing their thing in their little corner of the world. Maybe I can kind of do that thing. And you see somebody do it, and then they inspire you. It's just like art, man. There's no real original art. All art is consumed other art, and then it's regurgitated with your own flavor, right?
Yeah.
You're like, oh, this is the shit I like, blah, and it comes out. So, you know, now we live in a time where you can be like, fucking kids, chase your dream. And you know, there's always work out there, or sometimes there's not. So err on the side of fucking, like, if you're going to fail going after what makes you happy.
Yeah, that was the big thing for us, right? Of like, we, you know, for the longest time we looked at it in the inverse, where we're like, man, like what's everybody's number to quit? what would we have to be bringing in to make sure we quit? And we're like, oh, well, we're nowhere near that. This can never happen. Blah, blah, blah. And finally,
That's
it was
the
like
tender trap.
But it was like, the thing of like, well, wait, we're making this much now. We're not doing the content we want to make or our audience wants. So like, let's not think of it in terms of like what we're making now, but in what our high risk, high reward. What could happen if we go out and make the stuff everybody wants. It's
the smart play. I mean, I got very fortunate right off the bat early in my career. And was protected for a while, or my art was financed. I had my own Medici's, if you will. And then at a certain point, like I had to kind of go off and fend for myself. And between the two, one era was easier, but one era is more satisfying. Mm-hmm. So I think the road that you've chosen may not be as easy as it is being comfortable at some place with with a steady paycheck. But my God, it's going to be fucking absolutely satisfying.
Which is more fun, though?
The one that you build, hands down. Just because somebody, honestly, the more resources you're given, chances are your art's not necessarily going to improve. You know what I'm saying? Unless you're making a fucking Marvel movie, more money, then it looks good. Well, then yeah.
No, our goal is a DC movie. Everybody, get on, or the Invincible movie. Those are our two choices.
That would be amazing.
I don't know. There's no hands down. It's building your own thing is always more fun, right? And because every day that it crystallizes and becomes more real, you're like, holy shit, this is me doing my shit. Like I love comic book movies, but I don't want to make somebody's comic book movie because as much as I love every one of those characters, like somebody else's shit. Somebody else created that character. That's somebody else's story, and there's a zillion people out there that love to fucking they don't have a story in them, so they're like, fuck, give me a script. And you give them a script and they go off and make a comic book movie and stuff like that, or sometimes they write it too. But generally speaking, there's more than enough people out there to make those movies. So as much as like you love them, it's like, well, I don't necessarily want to do that. I want to do my fucking thing, even though that thing is lucrative or whatever. This is the thing I build. Why would I want to make a fucking Superman movie, a Batman movie, an Iron Man movie, even though I love these characters and I love watching other people's versions of them, when I can make my own fucking movie? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like there's so many people out there to take care of those flicks and way more talented than me. So, there's more, it's more satisfying building your own thing. It may not be as popular, you may not reach as many people, but at the end of the day, you're like, fuck, it's mine.
I can tell you one thing right now. I think I speak for all your fans out there, where I can say, even though it's not as popular, it's been really fun watching you come back into the fray. It really has. And like, what you have such a hardcore fan base out there that will support you in anything you want to do, and
they're very,
of that
very,
I have no doubt.
They're very sweet, man. And it's it's the older I get, the more I'm sure it shrinks or dwindles or whatever. But I've watched them kind of grow up with us. Our fan base. They have kids now,
Yeah.
They ask like, "Hey, man, you going to sell any kid clothing?" I'm like, "Oh, fuck, these people are fucking and having children." Like, they're no longer just people who used to like write me from their fucking parents' homes. They have their own homes and shit. We've all kind of grown up together, and time flies when you're fucking having a blast, as you'll see very quickly, as you've seen already. These fucking, as you listed the years that you've been working on IGN, I'm sure you don't sit there and be like, every one of them felt like a fucking decade.
It went on forever.
Totally. Time flies when you're enjoying yourself and shit like that, when you're doing what you want in life. If you would ask my old man, he would have said time went fucking slow because he hated working at the post office.
Yeah.
We all get to make pretend for a living and shit and chase that as our dream and try to make that dream a reality. So the time will fly by even fucking quicker, man. That's the weird thing. It just goes very, very fast. And, you look back because like I said, we're kind of programmed to move forward as quickly as possible. You look back after a certain point and you realize, oh shit, there's a long tail. That means there are a few people who will go see whatever we wind up making in the future and stuff like that because of everything that we've kind of done before, and not just like the movies, but like the podcast or the live appearances or fucking a cartoon.
It's
or
the same thing. I mean, on a much larger scale that like we have, right? Like everybody who listens and knows you is a fan. A friend. You know what I mean? That was always the thing of like. when I fell in love with you and everything else was Mallrats, right? Because like
We were speaking the same language.
I had never seen. And it's hard for Tim to believe because I know he's the pure one. He's super young, but at this day and age, no one was talking about Superman on a silver screen. Right. Nobody was putting Stan Lee in a movie. To see Wizard magazine in a movie, like, you know what I mean? It's like, yes, this is something that's us. And then you're on the message boards. You're part of it.
It's akin to like fucking seeing gay porn as a child. And getting a hard on and being like, oh my God, this is my world.
People
like,
understand me.
I gotta go fucking tap under a stall in a bathroom. This is amazing. It spoke to very few people, but that group of people just didn't have a way to get in touch with each other yet. That was right as the internet was fucking cranking up and stuff. So, like, now, like, it's
there's gay porn everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And everywhere you turn, there's somebody talking about Superman or fucking Stan Lee shows up in movies.
Yeah, I know,
and
right?
stuff.
Yeah.
But, like, that was just at a time where that didn't quite exist. But I'll tell you, man, where that came from, like, I always kind of like to give credit where credit's due. Like, Quentin Tarantino, of course, watching Reservoir Dogs and watching in the opening sequence where they talk about the Madonna song, like a virgin, blah, blah, blah. Amazing, because you're like, oh my God, they're talking about a fucking song, and I know this is a bank heist movie, but they're talking about pop culture, blah blah blah. So I remember seeing that and being like, we're allowed to do this? Holy fuck! Then I'm going to talk about fucking other movies because that's all me and my friends talk about. But referencing something, the magic of referencing something, where an audience goes, like, I know that. Yeah. That didn't exist. Like now, it's everywhere.
Sure,
it's its own fucking genre. I can't make a movie without referencing fucking other movies. It's my language. But I remember when I was a kid, man. It had to be 1983. I'm watching Facts of Life. The fucking girls' school.
Yeah,
show.
the TV show. Yeah,
TV show. Facts of Life.
Good.
When the world doesn't seem to be living up to your dreams.
Solo, come on.
Oh no, that's the part.
Nobody
where
knows that. That's
Facts of Life are all about you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the GameOverGreggy show.
Do you know the middle of it?
No, nobody does.
Nobody does.
It's like Stairway to Heaven, man. There's a part where you're just like, winding down the road. You just start filling in words.
I like how it was just a standoff. We both cut off there. Like,
I love how that's a second language for you too. You can get anyone to sing with you up until a point.
yeah.
Sing-alongs are fucking awesome, though, because they make you feel alive. So I was watching that show, man, 1983, and I think it was either it was the last episode ever, which might be the case, or it was the season finale, but they were all going their separate ways. And, I watched the show every fucking week. We didn't have a lot of choices back then. It wasn't a bad show. I mean, I'm sure now, like, you try to watch it and be like, holy fuck. But we didn't have
in that show.
Mrs. Garrett.
I don't know.
Joe had some bad hair.
It might not have aged that well, but like back then there wasn't a shit ton to watch. And every week watched that show. But this was the first week they did something, blew my hair back. And that's saying a lot because I always had very special episodes and shit where someone got drunk.
Joe's a drug addict.
Yes. Or Joe's cousin has CP, and then you were like, oh my God, how are they going to make this work in a sitcom? And they found a way to do it. This particular episode, they talked about, like, we're all, because they were leaving. They're like, we're all going to see each other this summer when the new Star Wars movie comes out. And that wasn't normal. Like, they didn't do that. It wasn't like you watch other shows and they talked about movies that were in a theater. Nobody was, Saturday Night Live, of course, would do topical humor.
Sure.
But, like, Laverne and Shirley and Happy Days were set in the 50s, and they didn't even really reference fucking movies and stuff like that. And I remember watching that episode and being like, holy shit, like, I'm going to see that movie this summer. Like, I exist because they exist.
We're in the same universe.
This is all canon.
Totally. And it was thrilling. And so later on in life, when I watched Reservoir Dogs, and I'm like, oh man, you can like do a whole scene where you talk about a fucking song and just like it doesn't really move the plot forward, but it says a lot about the characters and stuff like that. So for me, I was like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do what me and my friends do. We didn't talk to each other in real language. We fucking used lines from Raising Arizona to express ourselves to one another, and the Blues Brothers and stuff. So my characters did the same kind of thing because of that. So Mallrats is that movie that it's very much the internet, just before the internet existed. That's what whenever I think of that movie, I'm like, fuck, Mallrats is like the internet come to life.
Every line's a
minutes
meme.
before it
Yeah,
happened.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and it was-
Hartford, the whale. It was
That's
Vancouver
what I
once,
was
maybe
gonna-
twice in a life.
That's what I was going to say. It was formidable for me, too. Those sort of like Clerks, Mallrats chasing Amy, Dogma, and then even up to Jane and Silent Bob, because my brother is 11 years older than me. We always bonded over media, whether it was video games or movies or whatever. And I remember him coming home. He lived in Philadelphia, and I remember him coming home and being like, you have to see this movie Mallrats. Like, and I was like, in 8th or 9th grade. And we watched it, we bonded, and I'm a huge hockey fan, so that beginning scene with the Whalers and the Canucks, like I'm like, oh, we can, and then
You're like, he's right.
Yeah.
Hartford would only be the whale would only be once, maybe twice in a lifetime.
And then you go back to Clerks, and there's more hockey references there, and there's more references we can engage with, and so it wasn't only something that spoke to me, but it helped me speak to my brother in a way. Like it was almost like a generational bond. My brother, I had to tell him, like, I'm gonna meet Kevin Smith, man. He's like, that's fucking insane, because that's a special person to us in our relationship.
That
you know
story means the fucking world to me, though, because that's what you do it for. Like, I would love to say that, like, oh, I do it for the money, but like, I'm not I like making money, but I'm that's not why I do it. You do it because you just want to throw something out there into the world to see if anybody agrees and see that you're not alone. That's the beauty of the communications medium. You're like, I think this weird way. Does anybody else fucking agree? And a bunch of people that find you funny or be like, or enjoy your blog or enjoy your podcast or fucking sign up for your YouTube channel or whatever, however one expresses themselves in social media these days. You sit there going like, oh, fuck, I'm not alone. Like, everyone fucking agrees. So that story, or not everyone, but there are people that think like me. Pre-internet, man, you couldn't really do that. Like, you'd meet people at conventions or Comic-Cons or like-minded individuals if you were lucky in school. Like, I remember there was a guy named James Byrne who was the only dude in high school who had the balls to be like, oh, I like comic books.
Yeah.
Like, the rest of us kind of put him away and shit, and he was just still reading and still drawing. He was an excellent artist. So a story like that where it's just like me and my brother bonded over your shit, that's why I did it, like, for that. And that's why I kept doing it. First time I did it for me. Like, let me throw this out there and see if anybody fucking, like, feels the way I do. And because of that, I built an audience. And then after that, almost every time after that, it was just like, let me throw this out there and hopefully, like, I don't know, people embrace it as this thing the way we embraced Raising Arizona. Raising Arizona was religion. You know, just like religion's not for everybody. Some people you meet like, I fucking got no use for this. Raising Arizona was something that, like Catholicism, you know, it bound you to people where you were like, oh, fucking, you know that movie?
Yeah,
and it begins there, and then there are other sacraments that come into play. Blue Velvet was a massive sacrament in our world in terms of, like, we communicated through that movie. Like, that's how you found your friends, because it was like, do you like this? This is fucked up. And the people that liked it, you hung out with the most and shit. Do the Right Thing was another movie that, like, bound a lot of friendships and, like, made you kind of, like, go like, oh, you know, I don't need to hang out with these people anymore. Some people you'd show that movie to, you'd feel enlightened by that movie and be like, hey, man, let's watch this. And then you watch some cats and, like, suddenly they get kind of racial or whatever, and you're like, okay, I don't want to hang out with that.
Wow.
Yeah,
You
I'm
failed
moving
that
on
test?
in life. Exactly.
Yeah.
So stuff like that, you like movies, man, are the way we like you kind of crystallize it perfectly. There's almost no need for me to ramble, but the way that you and your brother bound over that, or bonded over that, bound sounds kind of like couldn't pass the movie. The way you bound to get bonded over it, like that's. I don't know. Like, that's what I did with my father. My father wasn't a hugely communicative guy. Like, he'd have conversations, but they were very, like you said earlier, like, how's the weather? Good.
Yeah.
You know, like, I saw Peter King. Like, oh, good. Like, nothing really deep. Never. I remember asking my father, like, at one point, what were your dreams, Dad? Like, what did you want to do? And he's like, what do you mean? As if I was just like, you failed in life. What did you want to do? No, it's just like, when you were my age, like, I know you as this one thing, the guy who, like, puts a roof over our heads and fucking, like, fucks mom and like, your dad. But what were you before Dad? Like, and did you hit it? And then I've realized later in life, my father was the most successful person I ever met. All he wanted to do in life was get married and have kids. So everything else was fucking scenery and greenery. So he hit the jackpot early in life, and he was so content. His job was just a fucking burden to him. So he wasn't, like, way communicative, but the way we communicated was fucking through movies. Yeah. So a motherfucker would take me to see World According to Garp at age 12, which is probably, you know, maybe a little heady for a 12-year-old.
Just a bit.
A little, you know. How do you explain, like, did that? And this is not in an era where people were, like, openly communicative. But like to have a conversation afterwards, which we didn't, but like you take your kid to see the movie, the potential conversation after is like, did that dude get his dick bit off in the car? Spoilers if you've never seen World According to Garth.
It was in my queue.
But he was like, he can handle it, and if he can't, well, he will after it was, I don't know, there was a generation prior to me where fathers would go out and play catch with their sons. And I think my father realized that, like, if I throw a ball at this fucking butterball, it's going to hit him in the face. So how can I bond with him? And he was like, movies. Like, I like movies. He likes movies. And so when you say something about, like, you and your brother bonding, it just, like, takes you back to, like, oh, yeah, that's why I got into it. Like, to make something that you could, like, share with somebody. In that instance, it was me and my father. In your instance, it's you and your brother. Thank you. That means a lot.
No. I mean, thank you, because, I mean, we were just reminiscing about, he even came home when Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back came out, which was right before 9/11, and we are from New York. So that was a traumatic time, but it was a few days before that I had broken my collarbone just a couple days before. Could barely get a shirt on. Just had my
for no good reason. You broke your collarbone.
I broke it on BMXing on Long Island somewhere, and just as young children do.
It's such a sad pre 9/11 story. You're like, I was BMXing on Long Island, minding my own business, enjoying the fuck out of life, busted a collarbone, but whatever the fuck. And then darkness.
When things couldn't get worse,
I just remember the middle of the sandwich of that happening in early September, and then obviously 9/11 was that my brother came home and we went and saw the movie, and I could barely move. Like, that was such a surprisingly debilitating injury where I had to like drape a button down over me. Basically, I couldn't even like put my arm in it. And we sat in the movie theater and we were hysterical laughing. And it hurt. I was laughing while I hurt. I'll never forget that. Yeah. You know. And so it is those moments that are special. That's why it's very surreal that we're here. I think for me,
it means the world. Do you remember that summer, like prior to September 11th?
Yeah.
What the big story was? So big that I believe it was on the cover of Time magazine.
No, well, I don't remember this part.
Shark attacks up and down the East Coast. Shark attacks had like dramatically increased for the first time in a decade or more. And so there were all these shark attacks happening right in that summer, man. And like getting national attention. Like, what the fuck's up with sharks? That's how fucking, like, that's the world we lived in right prior to September 11th.
Yeah.
Where people like, sharks, what are we going to do about them? And then everything fucking changed.
Everything got really serious. Really
if you were a
quickly.
Sharks publicist, you were like, fuck man.
God damn it, Al Qaeda. Shark Week was going to be the biggest thing
They pushed
ever.
us off the cover of Time. Yeah, it took them a while to get back.
But it's funny
it
'cause
had
you-
to be a bunch in a tornado, and then suddenly Sharks were like, we're back, motherfuckers.
It's, Colin has the collarbone, but like for me, right before September 11th, I was going to college, like for,
were
freshman
you
year,
going?
Mizzou, University of Missouri. And so like, I remember everything leading up to that and then how, it all flipped. But like, how, when I got there, like I told you this after the Comic-Con panel, right? Like what I introduced myself. Like, I remember when we had our freshman year, you're on the dorm floor, like 2 truths and a lie kind of shit. And the one that I got everybody was like, I'm going to be in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. And when they came around, that's a lie. And I'm like, that's the fucking truth. And I pulled up View Askew, and I'm like, look, there's my picture on this poster that's going to be in the background. And like, all this different awesome shit.
What's his name's office?
Yeah,
in Marshall
exactly.
Willen's
Yeah.
office. God, I remember that.
Yeah.
And I remember going, like, now it's commonplace where,
have fans or something
send
back
something in. Yeah, a fan could
It's a
send in
Kickstarter reward. For
Yes, now
they'll
they'll if you give them $500, they'll do it. But it was like, it was the 2000, right? Right before 2000, right before September 11th. So it was this glorious heady time on the internet where a lot more people had jumped online and shit. And so the View Askew message board, which was this is very simple whiteboard, very simple to Reddit.
Yeah,
very similar to Reddit. Where you post a thought and then motherfuckers would branch into 1,000 responses and shit. And we were able to do things like, hey, man, if you want, like, to see yourself in the background, we got to put pictures up anyway.
Yeah.
Why not you folks? And so they sent in a bunch of pictures, and we put them up on the pegboard and the pin board in the background. So that's fucking wild.
Well, it's just there was that, and that was like the biggest thing coming up to that. I remember listening to the Jay and Silent Bob soundtrack on repeat, right? Because that was one of the albums I bought right before I went, and I knew every one of the lines, like the interstitials or whatever in there, and like being so into
you and 3 people in the theater when it loving it religiously.
But like I remember, like one of the stories I always tell about before and after is I forget who sang it, the artist, but on you had how many people want to kick some ass on the thing, right?
Yes.
And I remember went to college.
Stroke 9.
There you go. Went to college, got LimeWire, started illegally downloading music, but at the time, whatever, who cared? And I remember like on
I had LimeWire, I remember
September 15th. They put up a new version of that live, and it was their first live performance after it. And it was like this whole thing about violence is no answer to violence. And it was like that, you know what I mean? Just a week separated the way these guys changed their song, you know what I mean, to respond.
So they took how many people want to kick some
into
a post
because there's like that
9/11?
part where, you know, don't lay it on, and like violence is no answer to violence, blah, 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 and it's hard to see. Like, it was totally like everybody calmed down, and it was like what I needed to hear. It's like really weird. I did not expect to get into this.
Down the rabbit hole.
Obviously, we're still
So that's our
affected by
advice
that.
for starting out on our own. Great, stroke 9. Kevin, what's your topic?
God, where do I want to go, man? We were just talking about something where I was like, "Ooh, that's an interesting."
There's plenty.
thread.
We can get around if you want.
You're talking about YouTube when you were saying this.
Yeah,
It's exciting.
I was just gonna throw here. I'll throw a little love toward something, but this is my go-to. Like the way that when I was younger, I'd be like, "Ooh, fucking Mork and Mindy is on fucking Thursday," and you'd circle it in TV Guide and fucking, you know, we couldn't DVR it, so you had to watch it when it happened.
DVR's so
and
good
shit.
now.
Oh, amazing. So it really it killed family time,
Oh, yeah.
you know, because it's just like, well, we could catch this whenever. But it's kind of sad that family time was spent in front of a television
time,
anyway.
right.
So there was a time where the family time at the dinner was killed by television and shit. But fuck, what was I talking about? Oh, so this is what I go to. My go-to for entertainment, the thing that I'm like, oh shit, it's Sunday. My stories, as my grandmother would call it, like the Young and the Restless. Like you couldn't bother her when her stories were on. My stories are on Cinema Sins on YouTube.
Oh, yes.
Oh my
God, yes.
This is the perfect form of entertainment for any movie fan. Number one, you get to watch the movie again, kinda, because it's nothing but clips of the movie. And then number two, it's just like it's hysterical or enjoyable on a whole different level because, you know, it's almost like its own commentary track. And the movie's, you know, truncated usually down to the number's been growing. Now it's like how, you know, everything wrong with a movie in 19 minutes. Used to be like 4 minutes. But I got to tell you, like, I don't care. I fucking gather around and be like, oh, it's my jam. So they certainly don't need the help. They have lots of subscribers on YouTube, but that has been my go-to lately for entertainment. Like, and it makes me then go watch that movie again. Like, it's kind of like fantastic advertising for whatever movie they're doing, but it's also just fun. It's kind of cool watching somebody practice their art, man. Like watching them build an audience and go like, oh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to fucking throw up clips and I'm going to talk about like what's wrong with this movie. It's I don't know. It's the perfect 21st century distillation of what's possible on the internet. How you can like create, as you guys are learning and as you guys are branching out to do right now, you can create your fucking living and dictate the terms of your living and be responsible for fucking how you earn by being artistic, being creative, or just fucking around on the internet eating peppers and fucking talking about video games. It's a great time to be alive.
Yeah.
Yeah, we met those guys at VidCon a couple months ago.
Are they? Is it more? I always assume it's one guy.
Well, it's one
dude's
dude, but
voice.
it's a team that edits
puts
and
it
like
together.
does all the clips and all that stuff.
Another
And-
one I love is the Screen Junkies.
Oh, Screen Junkies are great.
Whatchamacallit, the
Honest
Honest
Trailers,
Trailers.
yeah.
And I watched their behind the scenes of how it was done. I found that fucking fascinating
Yeah.
because I always assumed, oh, it's like one guy sitting there watches it, writes a bunch of jokes. It is it's no fucking joke, dude. Like they produce YouTube videos now the way they used to produce television. Everyone's got a fucking staff, like a staff of researchers and stuff like
We
that.
have Kevin over there.
Good job, Kev.
It's our staff. It's all we need.
It's kind of crazy, but yeah, it's both of them are real. Like the one CinemaSins seems to be far more consistent, and I get pissy when they don't do like more than like 2 a week or something.
Yeah, right. That's the thing. We know how much content, how much time it takes to create that content. I'm like, fucking do more.
But that's
where are they
the-
all? But
that's
hot mess
art,
moves.
dude.
Hot
That's-
mess moves. Get your shit together. Make more episodes.
You will
Fuck.
be hearing that for the rest of your life. Like that's when you choose to enter the arts, man. This is the common conversation you have with your audience. After you show them something you've just labored on forever, they go, "That's great. What's next?" And you're like, "I just fucking finished that magic trick, man. Like,
Yeah.
what do you mean? What's next?"
Yeah, I always
But
feel that way
it's
with
voracious. Man.
It's with video games, right? Where I'll talk to developers and have them on, or I'll see them get interviewed by somebody else, and you're like, "All right, so what's happening with the sequel?" And he's like, "I just spent 3 years
of my life
making this. Like,
it's something from nothing, little numbers on a computer, and they kick each other's ass and shoot each other. And you want to know what's next?" But yeah, that's like we've seen it. Let me see the next
yeah,
thing.
it's
Yeah,
crazy.
These days, it's so crazy too, especially with the internet, where we can sometimes produce, especially at IGN, multiple videos a day, and we're just putting out all this content. So then when we put way more effort and work into something that we love and care, like there'll be videos we make that we pour our hearts into. Some we're talking, we're not really doing anything, and the audience doesn't see the difference. You know,
I agree,
and it's crazy. Then they'll just move on to the next one. They'll just be, oh, cool, and you're just like, no, guys, no, we did this thing. Like
This is the one that's supposed to blow up.
Yeah, you should know this one.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy that
there's
just
no
how things work
pointing
these days.
to what becomes viral. There's no, the best you can do as a new media creator is just create vast amounts of content and hope that something pops or they find out. The other day, things gravitate to the top of the YouTube page. There's some little cartoon about a dad explains slave Leia outfit to a little girl.
Oh, yeah.
And I looked at the dude's channel, and dude's got very few subscribers, and he's made a couple of these videos and stuff, and all they're all animated, all clever, but perfect topic at the right time.
Yep.
And the way it was phrased, all of a sudden, a bunch of people going like, "Oh fuck, that is interesting. What would you say to a fucking girl, a young girl who's like, the fuck's with this costume?"
Yeah.
And boom, that is now over a million hits, probably at 2. It's gone viral.
Yeah.
But you can't gauge that. Like that dude wasn't sitting there going, "This is the one." I don't know. Maybe.
Well, and that's the thing for us, right? Like even when before we rebranded and we were doing all this content, we're doing the podcast, we're doing great topics, they're timely, we're expecting this one could do big numbers. It doesn't, or it does. They all do fine. We have a great audience, but for the longest time, our most successful video was It was the archive of the Fast and Furious live stream, which was a camera pointed at a bunch of fat guys on a couch watching the Fast and Furious, not giving commentary, not doing anything. It's just that was a great headline. People tuned in, they'd watch what's happening, they'd pop to the comment, and they'd be like, "Wait, why aren't you showing the video? Why aren't you showing all the movies back to back to back?" Because we were marathoning all the Fast and Furious, and it's like, well, that's not what we're doing. You know what I mean?
What
like,
an amazing age where somebody will fucking watch you watch
movies. Yeah. Well, the other, we had a breakout success on a stupid live stream on Black Friday where Colin and I played a best of 7 Monopoly tournament on a board game, and we had 2 cameras, one on the board and one on us, and we're like, no one's gonna watch this, and I'm watching the numbers, like we have like 2,000 people concurrently watching this right now, like live, and now it's got like 35,000 people. There's like 35,000 views on this video on demand. It's just like,
what did we fucking do before the internet?
Right? Yeah, no, I know.
Like, how starved were we for entertainment? But it's so weird and I don't know, encouraging to know that there are 2,000 people out there who'd be like, I got a few minutes and watch this guy play Monopoly.
It's the weirdest thing, and this is going back to Mallrats, right? Is that, and I remember when you got into podcasting, I was like, oh, great, I'm glad because we've been podcasting at IGN forever, right? And with Beyond and everything else and now our own shit. But when you did, I'm like, oh, that's such a natural thing, blah, 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 blah. But it never dawned on me to flip it back and remember the first DVD I ever saw was Mallrats and how amazing it was to watch you guys picture-in-picture talk about the thing and how that bonded me to everybody. And that's why, like, when Affleck started blowing up, I'm like, oh, man. I love Ben, and I know Ben because of this, and I'm glad
I've
to
heard
see
him make jokes like that he would never make in an interview.
I'm like, oh, you like that movie with that guy? He slept on Kevin Smith's couch, Mom, when they were making this movie, and he heard this fight between Kevin and his then girl. It's a long story.
That's how I got to podcasting because, like, the way Mosier described it, Scott Mosier had listened to an episode of the Ricky Gervais podcast. And he goes, it's kind of because I was like, what is it? And he's like, well, that is a radio show that they put up online for us to be able to listen to here. But he goes, but it sounds just kind of like, what we do when we do a commentary track. He's going, people sit around and just bullshitting. And I was like, really? That appealed to me very much. There was a podcast that I was on. Like, I never give these guys any credits. I think it was called Geekscape or Geekcast. This is going back to 2006. Okay. Yeah, they had a real, like, very simple theme, like kind of Geekscape. Fuck, I forget the name of it. Anyway, these 2 dudes came to our old office on down the street a little bit, the View Askew office, and they brought their little fucking recording device with them and shit. They'd found me online. We were talking on some forum. They're like, hey, do you want to do a podcast? And I was like, oh, sure. And we sat down and recorded a desk, 3 mics and shit. It's the first podcast I ever did. And I instantly fell in love. Right. I was so jealous of these 2 dudes. I was like, you do this all the time? Like, fucking just for free, for nothing? Like, there's no... It was clearly passion project.
Sure.
So I was like, fuck, this is possible? And so I remember hitting up Mosier. I mean, really, we started Smodcast. One of the reasons was Ken Plume, the guy was running Quick Stop Entertainment, which used to be Movie Poop Shoot. We had Movie Poop Shoot, became Quick Stop Entertainment. So a lot of people bitched about, like, people that used to write for the site be like, it's tough to get credentials with a site called Movie Poop Shoot. And I was like, really?
Well, I remember when you guys did that when I was still, hitting up the website all the time, and I clicked over because I was like, you were like, somebody's talking shit about us on this stupid site, and I went and talked, and I'm like, oh, it's got an ass, and I immediately X'd out, and then like weeks later, somebody's like, oh, it was this and it was that, and I'm like, oh, I never dug deep enough to find the Easter eggs to Blunt Man and Chronic.
We had put up a fake website, an anti-Jay and Silent Bob website that had the first trailer buried in it and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I hit a pothole. What was I talking about right before that? It was that boring. Nobody remembers.
We just keep going with you. We're just shucking and jiving right
I forgot what it was.
Shadow boxing.
Boy,
He's good at that.
it's gonna fall.
You were
to the
talking about
cracks.
the guys you were podcasting with, and then
Thank you.
Yeah.
Goddamn.
All right, so
Goddamn, Colin Moriarty.
Well
Come on, round of
done.
applause.
So those dudes, man, I sit down and I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to do what these cats do. And Ken Plume was like, well, we could use some traffic on Quick Stop Entertainment. And so I said, hey, man, well, this is the confluence of events that topped with Scott Mosier and I hadn't been hanging out and having a good time, like bullshitting. All our hangout time was work related and shit. And what, our relationship had been predicated on sitting around going like, hey, man, what do you think fucking happened after the Death Star blew up? Like shit that. So I was like, well, maybe if we sat down and forced ourselves to sit down and record one of these podcasts once a week where, it's not business, it has nothing to do with our work or anything like that. It's just this bullshit and whatnot. And then we have to put it up, then it'll force us to hang out for once a week and just bullshit and not work or something.
That's the exact same thing that happened with us. Is, you know what I mean? Like Colin and I lived together and worked together at IGN, you know what I mean? People were always like, oh, don't you get sick of each other? And it was like, no, we don't see each other that much at the office. And when we go home, we go to our separate girlfriends, our separate rooms, we do separate things. So we weren't even having like friend time anymore. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Which
is crucial.
Oh, yeah.
Man,
You lose sight of it's a real relationship. You need to treat it like a relationship.
Yes.
And so when we started doing that, yeah, for sure it was time with us. But then on top of that, Nick and Tim went from being like, oh, we know them, they're our friends, to being like, oh, well, they're our bros, we'll die for them. You know what I mean?
That was how I got to it, man. Was like that confluence of events was like, I want to do this. Like those two guys, that podcast was just fun. I was like, wait, we could talk about whatever we want. We could go as long as we want. There were no rules.
Yeah, exactly.
Man. And then the idea, and it's still the same today, man, as most cats know or maybe don't know, but like, there's no fucking gatekeeper yet. Still keep waiting every day. Somebody would be like, from now on, Mr. Internet says you can or can't post something. But it's the Wild Wild West. It continues to be the Wild Wild West. The only medium that I can think of, like if you want to stage a play, you got to get permission, pay some fucking rent, whatever the fuck. If you want to make a movie that goes into theaters, believe me, there are plenty of gatekeepers that will keep this in check. Unless you're financing it yourself. And even then, if you want to get in the theater, there's a gatekeeper who could say no. If you want to make a television program, there's a lot of checks and balances to keep you from fucking expressing yourself. But in this medium, podcasting, still, and YouTube, still, there's nobody. Like fucking, it's very extreme what you have to do to get something taken off fucking YouTube. and even more extreme, you have to say something insane to get a podcast taken down.
Sure.
Like it's just utter freedom right now. And one day somebody's going to figure out how to fucking charge you to do this or fucking stop you from doing it without fucking them saying, oh, we approved this.
Right.
Until then, man, do it because it's as close to homegrown entertainment as you can get. And nobody's fucking, there's nothing but upside. Like you can find a massive audience without fucking having to get through some gatekeeper or pay to do so. Or you could just hobby it, man. Like you just like record conversations. Use it as an excuse. Like me and Mosier has an excuse to used it as an excuse to hang out. Use it as an excuse to sit down with your fucking mother or father and be like, hey man, what was your life like? Because one day you run out of that opportunity and you don't ever get to fucking find out. Like I recorded some podcasts with my mom and it was nuts because I fed her weed cake and she was so honest. But I got to like talk to her as like, what was this like? What's that like? Rather than just be like, you're my mother and I honor you as my mother. Kind of want to get to the heart of who she was as a person. If you ever want to figure out who the fuck you are as a person, how the fuck did you get here? What decisions did she make that led to the moment where she's like, oh, I'm gonna fuck this doofus, and then 9 months later I was born.
Yeah.
So, you can even use that fucking podcast as an excuse to like sit down and like talk to somebody that you find interesting, but you don't have any like entree into. Sometimes it's weird in our culture to be like, hey, you want to go out or go to a movie or want to get something to eat? It's much easier to be like, I'm thinking about recording a podcast. You want to come over and be like, oh, yeah, I understand.
Yeah,
that.
sure. Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, we'll sit around, we'll talk for 2 hours.
Yes.
It'd be great. Yeah. Well, and that's the whole thing we always talk, like we record out of the spare bedroom and we call it our home studio. But like when we invite a guest over, I have to like, they come like, this is our house and that's my dog and my girlfriend's over there. But this is where and like, you know what I mean? There's that initial like, oh, all right, cool. And then it's just like, but on what other situation would I have Michael Rosenbaum in my house?
We should really
chilling
start telling them ahead of time, by the way.
I do. I say home studio. I drive home that it's the home, but I think people don't understand it's the home.
They're like, we heard the studio part. You weren't fucking kidding about the home. But what better job to have where you can like literally roll out of your fucking bed and put on a robe and go do it? Do you hear? Let me ask you this: do you find yourselves going like, "Oh, save that for the podcast"? Sometimes it interrupts.
All the time. This guy won't let us talk.
Yes.
Like I swear, every conversation we have, he's like, "Save it for the show."
Well,
Save it
no,
for the show."
it's because we'll be in the
Fucking
car and
smart.
like, what's your topic? And my topic's, what it's tables. And then Nicole, I got a story about tables. It's one time where I'm like, no, I don't want to hear the story twice. I want to have an honest
tell
reaction.
it to you.
What?
I like when you listen to me.
Well, I only listen to you on the podcast.
That's true. That's why I need that in my life.
What you got to do is wire everything so you're constantly recording all the time.
Ooh, we wish we could do that, but see the car rides to the podcast.
the car rides.
Those are the ones that what you're saying
throw
about
up
the whole
GoPros,
internet.
man.
The internet like doesn't take things off. That's the stuff that they're going to take off.
All right.
We get all the raunch out in the car ride, and then we go PG-13 for the podcast.
We got to test it on the trip down here yesterday. We set up a GoPro and
Did
mic'd
you?
everybody in the car, and that way that was like our Patreon exclusive episode we put up over on.
It was so vanilla.
How
though.
long did you shoot?
Oh, same thing, hour and a half. We tried to hit. That's our like promise to the
Who
listener.
was driving?
Kevin did.
Kevin.
Is like people who listen to the show and watch the show know Kevin's the unsung hero. Even though we mentioned him, but we don't let him on camera. I think 3 fans now have seen you in person. Today at Meltdown, a fan came over to meet us and was like, and I'm like, this is Kevin. And he's like, oh, it's a pleasure to meet you.
Get out of here. It's like seeing Clarabelle with the makeup off.
Right.
A lot of people in the audience like, who the fuck is Clarabelle?
Do your fucking history on TV.
Look that up on the
Bye,
internet.
kids. So sad.
All right, so that was my topic.
Okay.
What's your topic?
Oh, so we're skipping my topic. We're going straight to Nick here.
Yeah, I want to ask you the question.
Fire away.
A good question. So we're talking about. You talked earlier.
A good
in
question.
Topic
The rest
one.
of the show sucked.
The rest of it was rubbish. It was all build up to this moment. You mentioned how our attention spans have gotten a lot shorter, right? And there's so much content out there that we feel we need to watch a lot of it. Well, that wasn't the case back in the mid '90s when you made Clerks. So, in your opinion, can something like Clerks happen again? Is that even possible in today's society?
Here's the one thing I can say definitively about Clerks. There will never be a movie that looks that bad again. Like, think about
It
it.
looks really great on Netflix, by the way. It's very crisp.
It does it really?
Oh,
but
yeah.
it's still like you can't, even with a cell phone, you can make a better looking picture than that at this point. Everything looks like 35 millimeter at this point.
Right.
Now, could that happen again? I mean, every year at Sundance, there's this film like came out of nowhere. The woman who does Girls, Lena Dunham.
Yeah.
She came from indie film world. What was it? Tiny Furniture, I think.
Oh,
was
right.
her,
Oh,
right, yeah,
was
yeah.
her flick. So I definitely think it's possible. But it's like YouTube has kind of supplanted that, so to speak. Like indie film, there was a period where, they were taking chances like crazy, and now indie film is like a movie that a studio didn't make, but it still's got tons of famous people in it, and sometimes costs $15 to $20 million.
Right.
So it's a completely different, like Imitation Game with Benedict Cumberbatch. That's an indie film, but that's pretty fucking expensive indie film and stuff. So the low budget kind of like out of nowhere thing, the Cinderella story, as they used to call it, like me and Robert Rodriguez, Ed Burns, a host of others who came through Sundance. I don't know if that can happen again. Not quite that way,
Right.
It seems like for me, right, it's the fact that I always talk about like our attention spans are shattered glass. You throw that you start with a giant piece of glass, you throw it down, and you have all these shards, and it seems like to capture the moment that way for an indie film would be so tough, where everyone's talking about it, where it's like spreading. Like I always think about it in the same way of like Blair Witch Project, right? Where you heard all these like rumblings of this. It was the first found footage film, and people couldn't tell if it was real or not. You know what I mean? Like by the time it got to theaters, everyone knew about this flick and wanted to see it.
Yeah, we had that. We had it sort of happen with Paranormal Activity, but that was a while ago.
I agree. Paranormal Activity was the last one, but that was not like. I don't think that movie like. Paranormal Activity stood on its own feet based on the concept. So did Blair Witch Project. So much of Clerks was predicated on, and this guy, he made the movie in the convenience store. So that movie leaned heavily on the backstory, at least in its theatrical life, and it never played on more than fucking 50 screens in theaters. It didn't go fucking wide and deep. Where it found its true audience was when it went to home video, and that's where people were like, they weren't writing think pieces about it anymore. The true audience was going, that's me. That's my friend. I remember there were a few reviews. There was one review in People magazine that said about Jason Mewes' character, you want to find the rock the actor crawled out from under, make sure there's nothing else like it under or something. But they were foreign people to the people that reviewed the movie because there weren't a bunch of internet bloggers.
Right.
Now that probably worked in my benefit because you had a bunch of people writing in newspapers and stuff like that going like, well, this movie is a snapshot of Gen X and blah, blah, blah. If Gen X had a voice like the internet at that point, maybe they would have said, no, he's not. Like, this is, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, there's no one there to say, wait, I am a representative Gen X, and I don't know if this is it.
Bingo.
She just fucked a corpse.
Exactly. So I mean, look, the closest I came to that was I remember Harmony Korine, the filmmaker, at one point said in some interview, if he is the voice of Gen X, then I want to kill myself or something like that. He doesn't speak for me or whatever.
Right.
So, and that was at the beginning of the internet too. So I benefited greatly from people that wrote about that film intelligently or something. But that movie found its audience at home where people were like, oh, I am Randall. Oh, I am fucking Dante. Or I know a Jay and Silent Bob and stuff. So it had this weird two-life effect. But I don't know if, I mean, there are always movies that come out of Sundance, but it's tough to surprise people anymore. Right. And low budget is kind of not the move anymore. And the low budget quickly gets absorbed into the business. Like, you got to remember when we started, it wasn't us going like, we're going to get fucking rich and direct a studio movie. Like, that was not the path. Now it is. Now you can make a movie like the guy that made Godzilla made that weird, what was it?
Monsters.
Yeah. Low budget movie where he went and very clever how he did it and shit, and shooting in areas where there was already damage and whatnot. Yeah. But like that dude went on to like make fucking Godzilla.
Right.
That didn't happen back
Star Wars
in the day. And now a fucking Star Wars movie. So I think if that had been on the table back in the day for me, that would have been intimidating enough for me to not try to make a movie. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, that's the path. You make one of these indie films and then you make fucking Godzilla. Like, that maybe that's the path for talented filmmakers and stuff. But I guess for me, I was so, I don't know. I'm glad I came up in a time where there was not like, this is a fast track to that.
Blaze your own trail kind of thing, right?
Or not even just like there's like I'm not a visual stylist, so I was never going to make a comic book movie. I love watching them, but like you couldn't get a comic book movie out of me. It requires too much effort, and I was still learning my craft. I mean, I'm still learning my craft to this day, but I didn't start out as a strong visual stylist. All content with no way to fucking express it and shit. So 2 decades into it, now I know how to express myself visually with a camera. I just don't have access to the same type of material. And it would also be redundant at this point. Like the stuff that I wrote about, like Clerks and Mallrats Chasing Amy, Dogma, Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, the shit that like, oh, people identify with that from that period, blah, blah, blah. That, if I make that, a movie like that again, people are like, what's the fucking point? Dude, the internet does that every day in a far more clever way than you do. Then there's also the question of like, I can't really access personal stuff anymore. That's how I played the game early on. I just took my real life and put it into movies.
Right.
But then at a certain point, my real life became the movies. Like, I got my wish. Like, this is what I wanted.
Yeah.
And I became a filmmaker. But when that becomes your life, you stop living a real life. Like,
I'm going to write a new script about how I'm so tired from podcasting and
bingo,
going to events.
Bingo. Like, you could tell when I ran out of personal things to say, more or less, when by the time I get to Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, because I'm like, this is a movie about making movies. Like half of the movie takes place on a movie set. That's like the furthest thing from Clerks you can imagine. Clerks is relatable to anybody who's ever had a fucking job, whereas Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back is just a flat out, balls out comedy that's completely unrealistic and stuff. And that's because my life had become completely unrealistic. I made a little black and white movie, and I made it going like, someone will see this and then they'll give us money next time so I don't have to pay for the movie. It wasn't like this will start my career. It was just like, this will get us to the next movie.
Get me out of debt.
Maybe at that. So had I thought that like, well, this is the path to a career, blah blah, that would have seemed too daunting to me, and I wouldn't have tried. Just like if I had known Richard Linklater. Like, he was from Austin, I knew that. But I was like, this guy's from Bumblefuck, Texas, man. He made a movie. He's not in Hollywood or Los Angeles and shit, or New York. If he could do it in Bumblefuck, Texas, I could do it in Jersey. And Bumblefuck, Texas is Austin, and then it's not Bumblefuck, it's fucking Austin. It's a cultural mecca, not to mention the state capital. It's an amazing place, especially if you celebrate the arts, particularly in Austin. But thank God I didn't know that. If I had a little bit of education to be like, well, Austin is an arts community supported by UT, and of course he could make this amazing film in that world. And I would have then also been like, oh, maybe I shouldn't try this after all. Little ignorance goes a long way, you know. And
we're hoping so.
Oh, it helps. It absolutely helps, because if you knew everything you were about to face, you might not go on the journey. Sometimes you got to discover shit along the way and whatnot, and some things are harder than you think they're going to be, and some things are way easier than you ever imagined, man. Sometimes you catch a wave and you're off and running. But I don't know. I don't know if it can happen like that again in movies. It happens like that all the time on the internet. There's like I'm this weird hybrid or cross between, like, I don't know. I swear, and I don't say this I don't mean this to sound arrogant. It's just something I've been thinking of a lot lately. Like, I just can't point to somebody else and be like, he's like me. Like, and not like, I'm a true original. Anytime I want to be like, oh, I'm a filmmaker, like David Fincher. I'm like, well, no, I'm not. David Fincher, like, that's what he does. The only thing he does, and he's exceptional at it. And then I go like, oh, well, I'm a podcaster like this person, but that person's also not a filmmaker like I am, or doesn't have a TV show. I'm like, all right, well, then I'm a guy who does fucking comic book, you know, like, it's just, there are so many different things that I do that I can't, like, point to someone else exactly and be like, we do the exact same fucking thing. But I notice that it's happening more and more. Many artists are spinning more plates because A, we can, and B, that's survival. Like, at the end of the day, man, sometimes it's like, all right, this is what I do, but when I'm not doing this, I can also do this. It helps to be, have a few tools in the toolbox. So
there's a ton of YouTubers now writing books that are then getting turned into movies. Yeah, which is very interesting and with some good success. Famously, The Fault in Our Stars was a book.
What's his name?
John Green.
Yes,
and I mean, brilliant guy.
And my kid was hip to him long before I was. Sure. Like, I remember seeing that book years ago on her desk and being like, "What's this?" She's like, "There's a guy on YouTube. He makes videos, and I watch him. And he wrote a book." And I was like, "Oh, good for you, and good for that young
guy."
Yes. And little did I know,
never has to work a day in his life.
Oh my god! And you want to talk about subscriptions on fucking YouTube?
Yeah.
But that dude is fucking insanely famous in that circle, and translated over to film, and so now it goes into another medium. So, like, that's all possible now, and that's why you guys are like coming. You are merging at the absolute right time. You can absolutely be captains of your own destiny. There's a couple cats. Brian Quinn. Is a friend of mine, a guy. He's in a group called the Tenderloins. They do a show on True TV called Impractical Jokers.
Oh, okay.
So Brian Quinn,
love that show.
Brian Quinn is such a beautiful human being. I've known this dude since like 1995. He was like you or you, one of three people who saw fucking Mallrats in a theater, or Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back in a theater. He went, and he was a Staten Island kid. And, he had, it was early on the internet, like the days of the forum, the whiteboard, the ViewSkew message board of viewskew.com. Whiteboard sounds so fucking racist, but, that's what they call it, just writing on a whiteboard.
And you're a racist.
And I'm pretty damn racist. He had said, hey, man, I went into a bookstore to look for the Mallrats script book, and the guy behind the counter, and this was weird. This is like the first time I heard about this, but certainly not the last. Guy behind the counter having an opinion on me, like, to a total stranger. And this would come to define who I am and what I do. Like, for those who know and give a shit about entertainment and stuff, if you say, oh, that guy, some people go, oh, I love that guy. And a lot of people go, I fucking hate that guy. So this was the first instance of the guy, Brian Quinn, going, this guy, I went to get the book in a bookstore, in a Walden Books or whatever, and a fucking dude said, oh, that movie's terrible. And so I said, oh, well, you should go back and give the bookstore dorks some shit. Brian Quinn sends a recording, it's cassette, a week later. And he goes, Kev Smith told me to go give the bookstore dorks some shit. So I went to the bookstore, and this is what happened. And it's a fucking tape recording of the dude going, hey, hi, do you remember me? He's going, yeah, I came in last week looking for a Mallrats book. And the guy goes, yeah, I remember you. He's going, yeah, well, I know Kevin Smith, and I told him that you didn't like his movie. And you know what he said? And you hear the guy go, no. And he goes, he told me to give the bookstore dork some shit. Screaming at him. And he goes, fuck you. What? And the guy goes, time to leave. And he goes, what are you going to do about it? Like screaming at him and stuff. Recording it. And it was really disturbing, but at the same time, very flattering.
The kind of power you have over your fans to send them out to do your bidding.
Right away, I hired Brian Quinn. I was like, you deserve a job. And he helped us build our fucking web sales division. Like, he was the first guy. There was no web sales. People would send in a check or money order, and he would do the mail order form. But years later, man, he's got this fucking show. Now, him and his buddies had this fucking comedy group that they would do sketches together and stuff. They did one for like some NBC show. I forget what it was. I don't know if it was the stand-up comedy show, but like they were involved in this competition where they won something online and whatnot. And the dudes turned that, they parlayed that little bit of YouTube success into a fucking television, their own television show, which also has its own spin-off television show where they talk about how they made the show. It's one of those shows.
Yeah.
All from sitting around, hanging out with friends, chasing the fucking dream and stuff. So you guys are doing the exact right thing, man. Whether another Clerks can happen or not doesn't matter. It did happen, and now people expect more. And
when's your next one?
Well, not even of me, of you guys.
Oh,
like,
sure.
You can't even do that. You can't get away with something as like, look how cute and simple and fucking like user friendly this tiny little movie, obviously made by an idiot, is. Now there are lots of us out there. Now the internet is full of Kevin Smith circa 1994. Everybody far more talented than that guy as well. And everybody with a forum to tell the story. And you guys are diving into that fucking pool. I salute you, man. That's awesome.
Now, in the middle of that, it all dawned on me that I had to send Kevin to the car because I've been carrying with me in my bag, because I haven't unpacked it, a copy of Phobia. Now, Phobia is an independent movie made by our friend Mike Aransky, who came on the show to sell it. And he of course, cited you and Clerks as being one of their inspirations, because this is a movie they shot over, 5 years on weekends?
I think it was over like 18 months or something like that of weekends. So they had regular jobs, but they kept it going for months every weekend to film. And they've made quite a few of these movies. And this was 5 years later, I think, after they made this, they finally finished it and got it distributed, and they have this amazing cover for it.
It is fucking. I mean, this looks
intense.
insane. It's got an O-ring, as they call it in the industry. An oversleeve.
That means something completely different to me.
There's another industry where it's far filthier to say over.
Yes.
This looks fucking pro. Like, as I was pulling apart, I was like, wow, man, motherfuckers had a dream about making a movie, and now they can actually hold on to the movie. And it looks like every other fucking movie, as good, professional, as any other fucking movie you would see sitting on a shelf or fucking.
Yeah, and you got that. That one's from Walmart.
I mean, that's fucking.
Isn't that crazy?
Awesome.
Yeah.
Like, and some people, like, that's success. Like, unparalleled success. Now, arrogance, ego would dictate, like, did it play in a theater, blah, blah, blah. Don't fucking matter. He had a dream. He made a movie. It's finding its audience. Like, that's what I love about right now, being able to practice art right now. There's no, like, if it doesn't do this, it doesn't count. Like, there was a time in our business where if a movie went like straight to video, that was like the worst fucking thing.
The kiss of death.
The kiss of death.
Right.
And that was the thing. I'm like, oh my God, what could be worse than a straight to video movie? And it was only because, you know, it had that kind of like, well, this is how things work. A movie comes out, and then months later, if not years later, it comes out on video. Then it eventually goes to cable. Then it eventually goes to television. And that's all changed now.
Yeah.
Now it's by any means necessary. Reach the audience. You don't need to go through fucking particular channels. Like this cat, you know, he was like, fuck, I'm going to make a movie. Just like years ago with Clerks, I was like, I'm going to make a movie. I got very lucky because that movie got picked up by a company that like then was like, all right, what do you want to do next? What do you want to do next? And they had resources. They had just been bought right before they bought me by fucking Disney. So I make like the, you know, rawest, and not intending like this is going to be hardcore, but for that year, the rawest looking, sounding fucking American independent film that winds up being a goddamn Disney movie. So, you know, that was not planned for.
Yeah.
I wanted to be this guy more than anything in the world. Who made Phobia? Rory Abel.
And Mike Aransky.
And Mike Aransky.
Well, Roy was the director.
I know, but I'm saying it's in our life because of Mike Aransky.
True.
Right now, Mike Aransky's so happy.
Mike Aransky.
Ignoring his kid, listening to Kevin Smith mention
is
his
who
name.
I wanted to be. Like, I didn't think, you know, I'd make a movie that, like, all I had in me was Clerks and then Dogma. I knew I wanted to make Dogma. And I knew I couldn't make Dogma until I made Clerks and stuff. So I didn't expect Clerks to, like, get picked up and go into movie theaters. Like, at best case scenario, I expected to four-wall it myself, which is what we later did with Red State. And that, too, was, like, that was my plan, and it was interrupted by fucking, like, unexpected dumb luck success with Miramax going, we're going to put the movie out and shit like that. But this is who I want it to be. The dude who's just like, I don't care how many people see it. I need to hold it.
Yeah.
Like, and I can't hold it in my head and heart anymore. I got to hold it here, man. Like, y'all seen Birdman, of course, by this point?
I haven't yet.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Birdman is a wonderful movie, but what it does, of course, like the series of single takes is spellbinding filmmaking. But I don't think I've ever seen a movie that so portrays the inner voice so perfectly. Mm-hmm. The inner voice that some people hear and some people don't. Like they talk about that fucking voice in that Muppet song, even the Rainbow Connection, where he's like, "Have you been half asleep and have you heard voices? I've heard them calling my name." It's a dippy little line, but it's so fucking true. Those of us who want to join the circus hear something that other people don't, and that voice can drive you fucking far. You know, it will make you chase fucking dreams. It'll make you push whimsy into reality and stuff like that. But it is the flip side to that voice. It's a double-edged sword. It is fucking relentless. Like, you never get to a place where you're like, I have achieved everything I wanted to, and I am done.
Yeah.
The voice doesn't let you stop. And that movie, I was watching that movie, and it was creepy because I was like, oh, my God. Like, it's never as, like, his voice, his inner voice was just like, we're a fucking God. It's never quite that.
That was awesome.
It was tremendous. But that voice was familiar to me where I'm like, oh, my God, I've had that fucking voice telling me to not stop and pushing me. And that got me to where I am. But it also fucking keeps you from ever being satisfied in that, you know, in that first world fucking way. It keeps you going like, well, maybe I'll do something else. Maybe I'll diversify. Maybe I'll try this. Maybe I'll try this. But that voice is a real thing, man. Like, it's something that anybody that wants to stand in front of people and do something, somebody who's not content to just live a normal life like my parents lived and shit like that.
Well, that's the thing.
Exists and drove you to the point you all have it.
Whenever I go back to Chicago, and my friends will be like, "Oh, cool!" Like, you know, they're in the suburbs and they have their jobs and their families they love, and like, have you watched? And they'll list off a million TV shows, and I'm like, no, and I'm like, you guys don't come home and make YouTube channels and go do conversations at bars with your friends and film those and put those up.
You know, you were talking earlier about how Clerks was mostly because of you. Like, you became the personality behind that, and they pushed you out there for it.
It was an adorable story. It was like, they made that movie where he works.
Yeah.
And he still works
Which
there.
is genius, by the way. Kudos to that for thinking of that.
That was just, honestly, not even like calculated. Because for me, the best backstory in the world had been told. Robert Rodriguez made a movie for $7,000 and he fucking went through medical experiments to do it. And what was our story? Our movie cost $27,575 that seemed ridiculous compared to the budget of El
Yeah.
Mariachi, and I didn't sell my body to Sundance. So I figured like the movie was actually going to have to stand there by itself. I didn't have a cool, clever backstory. They found it. The press found it or created it, or they started writing about it up at Sundance when Clerks got bought. When they first started, I saw this movie and I met the fucking dude and blah, blah, blah. And they were like, well, wow, this festival could change your life. It was early in the festival, so nothing had happened yet. But they were like, what are you going to do when it's over? And I was like, well, I have to be back at Quick Stop on Monday to work. And like, I wasn't being ironic. It's just like this, like we had
doesn't work, I gotta
shown,
go work.
yeah, like I was fucking like, we had shown the movie to every distributor who could potentially pick it up in advance of Sundance. All of them passed. So we were just going to Sundance. There was no like, we're going to get fucking rich. And this is before they made big deals there and shit like that. In fact, our year was the first year anyone ever sold a film at the festival. Normally it was done before or after the festival and stuff. There was none of this bidding frenzy stuff. So going into it, I was just like, playing at the festival is its own reward. And I couldn't I never thought people would give a shit. Like, we had no backstory. If anything, I thought the press would be like, $27,000. Do you know fucking El Mariachi only cost $7,000? And there was a car chase.
He's got money to burn.
Yeah, like, what's your problem? Where'd you spend the money? That's what I thought they'd say. But the backstory became people going like, oh, he actually works in that convenience store, and he's going back to work at the convenience store.
Right, and that's what the most powerful part of it was, right? It was that, I think unanimously Clerks is a very entertaining film. It's hilariously written.
It's
and
like a
resonate.
punk rock song. You know what I'm saying? Like you can't judge it like a normal piece of music because you're like, it does something to you.
Right.
It's primal and it's raw and it's by hook or by crook, by any means necessary. And because of that, you root for it.
I think that's absolutely correct. I think also, sort of part of the reason why it's so important and part of the reason why you're so influential is because you showed everyone that if you just take that first step, if you take that leap and that risk, that maybe, just maybe, good things will come. And if you don't, nothing's going to happen. Right?
I mean, I didn't even create nothing ventured, nothing gained, but that's exactly what it is.
Very
It's
true.
like you can either, Tusk was a perfect example. Either could have died as a fun podcast we all recorded, and some people will argue till the end of time. It should have fucking died. But for me, I was like, I really want to see this fucking movie.
It's worth it for that frame.
That alone, just to get there.
Yeah.
But I was like, I want to see it. Nobody else is going to fucking make this movie. And that was the same way I felt about Clerks. I wanted to see Clerks, but nobody was ever going to make Clerks. Nobody was going to make a movie where people talked about Star Wars and pussy and shit like that, or in hockey. That particular bouillabaisse, like, if I wanted to see it, I had a mind snap years ago where I was like, if you want to see a movie about the shit you and your friends talk about, nobody's ever going to fucking make that movie. Just make it yourself. And so I was like, all right. And then that kicked off my career. So years later with Tusk, same thing, where it's like, man, I want to see that fucking movie. Nobody's going to make that movie. But the thing that made me want to make that movie more than anything else, because I hadn't made a movie in like 3 years and shit, and I was content to like just tour and podcast, do TV or whatever. But I'd seen reaction on Twitter and Facebook of some cats going like, is that it? They heard the podcast. And by the end of the podcast, I'd talked myself into making a movie and stuff. And they said, like, there were a few people react like this. Is that allowed? You guys just talked about the stupid meme, and then you said, oh, we could end it like Iron Man, where a bigger suit comes out at the end. And then you said, that's a movie. Like, does that count? Is that
That's
allowed?
the creative process.
And that's what I loved. Like, so rarely do you have a fucking microphone or a camera on the moment of conception, unless it's fucking home porn. But you never have that fucking, it's never recorded, bing, that idea moment or something. And so many people had heard it, and they were like, okay, these two, meaning me and Scott Mosier, they work in the film industry for a few years now. They're, for better or for worse, you got to consider them fucking professionals and whatever. And they just sat there and said, fucking Walrus, end of Iron Man equals movie. And they're off and running. And there was one that was like, is that allowed? As if there were rules. And so I was like, fuck, there's a bunch of people out there don't know how to do that one thing. Take that first fucking
But that's
step.
the thing, right? And when you work, and I'm not saying working for a corporation is bad. I'm not saying
Not at
quit
all.
your job and go out there and just
No,
do
it's
something.
awesome.
But corporations have rules because they have to, because they are organizations that have to put rules forth in order to succeed. You get in that mindset of in order to do this, I have to get my boss to approve it. He has to get his boss to approve it. Let's play the strategy game. You forget sometimes, IGN's different. IGN, obviously, we do some really creative stuff.
They're
But
very
there is a
liberal,
lot of
very
that,
fun.
a little bit of levels there. But normal people do forget that they have it in them to do whatever the hell they want.
Yeah.
And now
that
is the time to do it.
Nobody can stop. And now is
can't.
the best time to do it because now there are more ways to distribute whatever content you're creating than ever before.
Right.
It's
you
all
can
free. They just
reach
take half.
people in
They just take
different
a cut.
countries. Think about that.
Yeah.
Like who aren't fucking local but still find it's no different than when I was like, I want to make this movie and see how many people think like I do.
Mm-hmm.
The internet just gives you a chance to do that like with anything.
Instantaneously.
And instantaneously. But some cats just don't know how to take the first step. And part of making Tusk was like, let me open source the movie. They could see, like, this was the idea. And let me show them, like, fucking, you can do this. Like, you can take a stupid idea with your friends and make it for real. Like, and, you know, some cats were like, well, yeah, of course you can because you make movies for a living. But I had stopped and salted the earth in my career and been like, fuck everybody.
I'm never coming back.
Exactly. I was like, so long, thanks for all the fish. And then I was like, wait, I want more fish. And so, you know, I had to come back into the room and shit. So I felt like if I could show the cats who give a fuck, who listen to the podcast or whatever, who the people that made that statement, which I was profoundly moved by, because I take for granted, as I think a lot of us do, the self-starting ability. Like you're going like, oh, this is what I want to do. And so you do it and stuff. Some people are like, oh, I would love to do that, but how do you begin? How does that fucking, what do you do? How do you write a script? Like, they just don't know. And there's an order of things or fucking what's allowed or blah, blah, blah. So I was like, let me just show them, like, this is how you do it. They heard the moment of the idea, the conception of the idea, take it all the way through to fucking them watching it on home video and shit, and show them this is how you do it. And you could take something stupid that maybe should never been made. An idea of, you know, a guy turns another guy into a walrus and shit. But with enough diligence and requiring a first step and then a bunch of steps after that, you can accomplish and you can achieve. And, you know, it's like whether or not all people love it, shit, man, that's just scenery and greenery to some respect. That's just ego. You're like, you would love everyone to love your idea. Fuck it. The fact that you get to make your idea and express yourself and support yourself by doing that, you've won the game 1,000 times over. Everything after that is just fucking gravy. And sometimes the gravy runs thick and fucking runny all over the joint, and you could even throw it out there so much. And sometimes it's just a little dollop where you're like, can I have more? And they're like, fuck no. You're glad you got that much and shit. Salt that shit, and that's it. But taking that first step, dude, that's it. And some cats don't know how to do it, man. That's why it's important when you do what you do. You're just like you say, everything you do is with a family, with this audience that you've built that's kind of a family. They're all listening, being entertained, number one, but they're also looking for the special sauce that you all got, the secret code that allows you to be so bold to chase your fucking dreams as well. Sure. So you're responsible for launching a bunch of other ships. It's exciting, man, when you do stuff like that. We live in this wonderful first world where, like, these are our big concerns. How do I express myself for a living? Not like, how do I stay alive? You
I know, right?
and
Where do I
not get
find
killed?
food?
Yes. How do I eat and stuff like that?
God, have you ever stopped to actually consider how many careers you've inspired?
No.
You
But I mean,
now.
but then I always think about Richard Linklater because I'm like,
Yeah.
well, he inspired me, and fucking, it's all like it trickles down. Right?
But it doesn't blow your mind that people are in film school right now and go, I want to be Kevin Smith.
I never think about that. Like I always I'm one of those people that I always lean or assume the negative. That's how I've conducted most of my affairs. That's how I've lived my whole life, and I think that's kept me somewhat grounded and not like. Every once in a while, I see someone online go, "He's pretentious with his head up his own ass." I'm like, you know what, man? I'll take a lot of shit. You can call me a lot of things, but like, one thing I know is I'm not pretentious, and I do not have my head up my ass. I am always checking everything I say. So I'll say something, and 2 sentences later be like, but I'm an asshole, so fucking disregard it and shit. I don't believe my opinion really counts for much. And that's how some people are irritated by that after you listen to a lot of podcasts that do like, fuck, dude, you say something and then you cut yourself down right over. That's how I survive in this world. So because of that, I never think like, oh, there's somebody out there that wants to like be me. I just think they look at what I did and be like, well, if that fucking chimp can do it, why can't I? And that's, that makes more sense to me. I'll maybe when I get close to the end of all this and shit, Like, if I'm lucky enough to have a deathbed, as opposed to like I'm in my car and I got fucking struck by lightning or some such shit. If I'm
Damn,
lucky,
that's double bad luck.
You know what I'm saying?
I thought you threw a curve to me. I thought it was gonna be an accident. It's a lightning strike to the car.
You thought a truck was coming? Dang, I get about like. But if I'm lucky enough to like have a deathbed, then I can maybe sit there and go like and look back at the long tail. But I find it's dangerous to to kind of
navel gaze.
Yeah. Oh fuck, because. If I did, I'm like, I say this with no hints of irony, I'm the world's biggest Kevin Smith fan. So if I really start fanning out on Kevin Smith and just like diving into, a lot of people go like, you are the big Kevin Smith. All you talk about is Clerks. Not really. I've done a bunch of things. But if I really started fucking like gazing at my own navel, I'd lose time going like, fucking, I know who I am and I know where I came from, and doing what I've done is tantamount to fucking becoming an astronaut in my world. It's just so fucking unlikely that the dominoes fell the way they would. And so because of that, man, I tend to always keep myself in check. And I always I never think like people want to be me. I think they want to do what I do. And I encourage that all the time, particularly with the podcast, because that's easy. For years, I've been telling people, go make a movie. But I always say the last thing under my breath, which is like, it's expensive. Podcasting is so much easier to be like, go record a podcast. There's no
put down your phone, turn on your voice memo app, and go.
Start fucking talking. You're already talking. Just put a fucking mic on it because it's all content to somebody.
Sure.
Like somebody out there is doing a podcast that is just about Raphael from the Ninja Turtles. Fuck the other three. It's just fucking Raphael.
Yeah, right.
And shit.
There's no one doing a podcast just about
I'm pretty sure that's Rob Paulson's podcast. Talking Tunes. Well, when I recorded this episode, it's Raphael. Colin, what's your topic?
I guess this will be. I mean, this seems kind of pertinent considering some of the things we've been talking about, but because we were talking about Clerks and the internet age, we talk about consuming content on the internet. We're talking about the thing we're doing on Kind of Funny, and so I'm kind of curious, and this can be kind of a lightning round kind of thing, but just what the internet.
There's no such thing as a lightning round when I'm involved.
Well,
the slowest lightning ever.
With us either.
That Colin usually likes to lead. He's like, this will be a short topic, and then it's 45 minutes of us talking about whatever.
How long do you think today you could go without the internet? And
what a great question.
And could you conceivably think of a life today where you would never use the internet?
Oh, Jesus.
It kind of goes hand in hand with what I was saying before about being Kevin Smith professionally. The internet is just a part of that.
Yeah.
And if I'm disconnected from the internet, then I'm not being Kevin Smith
You're
professionally.
fading away.
And how the
right?
fuck am I earning a living, and am I relevant? It's nuts. Like, there is no disengagement. So, I mean, if I were to step away from the internet, it would be almost stepping away from the career. Even when I walked away from filmmaking, I didn't walk away from the internet. In fact, that was how we sold tickets to live events and stuff like that. So yeah, it would be, for me to unplug would be like shutting down the career and me going native and like, hey, I'm just going to go fucking live the way people like, what was that movie? The Village. I'm going to fucking do this shit like The Village.
Just go live out in the forest.
Totally. And not tell the kids that we live on an animal preserve. Just like that movie. But it would be difficult for me to do it professionally. Personally, it would also be difficult because every morning I wake up, and before I launch into the business of, fucking being Kevin Smith, I try to do human things, and I read the news all the time. And that's my favorite thing in the world to do when I wake up. Just sit there, smoke a joint, read the news. It's the only way to get through the news is to smoke a joint because it's not news unless it's fucking horrifying. And so it's important to keep your head straight about what's going on in the world. Stops you from being a spoiled child. Is particularly in this industry, it really tends to like baby a person and shit. And when it's tough to be like, I didn't fucking get what I want, when you're like, a school in Pakistan was invaded and a bunch of kids were fucking shot because they wanted to get a fucking education by a bunch of fucking Taliban people. So, it's important to fucking consume that in the morning. And I guess I could do that with a newspaper. Like my father used to do that in the morning.
Yeah, you put on your suit and you get on the train and you're just rocking back and forth reading.
Totally. But I don't, I think I don't, it's not that I don't trust TV, but TV's not nearly as fast as the internet is, and I could get updated information.
Oh, yeah.
Like 15 minutes. The story posted 15 minutes ago. So for me to step away, dude, I'd really, it would have to be me cutting the cord and being like, I'm reverting to a way of life that I enjoyed or didn't enjoy circa 1993. like not even, let's say 1995, late 95 is when the internet entered my life. And you want to talk about, like, it's almost like my relationship with driving. From the moment I've started driving, I've never stopped driving. And, you know, if I want to get places, that's how you fucking do it. Same thing with the internet. From the moment it's entered my life, it has never stopped. And then it became so much a part of what I do professionally, too. I mean, I don't have regrets, but, like, if I can do it over or something like that, I would be more careful about that, about keeping maybe a little bit more for myself. But I don't know how else to do this except, like personally, and fucking go flat out. Like the movies, I you know, Tusk is obviously not a personal film. I tried at one point to, like, joke around. People were like, you know, what's this movie about? I'm like, well, it's kind of like a metaphor for working with Bruce Willis. But that was made up. Like, it was just a joke. Like, that wasn't true. So, you know, for me, Tusk is like, I'm at a point in my career where I ran out of the personal things to talk about. So I'm like, either I stop doing it or I just start making shit up. And I started thinking about, like, some of my favorite filmmakers, like David Lynch and David Cronenberg, and they make weird art. You know what I'm saying? Like, happy people don't make great art, you know, unfortunately. That's what I found personally to be the case. But they can make weird art. And David Lynch seems very happy, and David Cronenberg seems very happy, and the Coen brothers seem very happy making their weird art. And not a one of them, you ever look at their movies and go, I bet that happened to them in high school. You know what I'm saying? It's not like David Cronenberg was like, The Fly, this was my college girlfriend. You know, it's not. It's just they made shit up. And so I got to a place where I'm like, maybe I could just make shit up, and the internet feeds that. In the case of Tusk, it fed it directly. Like, I had my audience go like, yeah, fucking do that. And, you know, some people who hate Tusk would argue like, maybe you should unplug from the fucking internet and stop making shit like Tusk. But I don't know. I support anybody that supports me doing something creative. Now, the internet, most people know, is a very negative place where a lot of people support negativity and whatnot. So when you find an oasis of positivity on the internet, it's best to spend as much time there as you can and get as much as you can out of it, because those meals are few and far between. But unplugging would be difficult for
I
me.
could not do it under any circumstances. When I got the new iPhone the other day, and, like, it's that thing where it was disconnected, right? And, like, you have to, you know, turn it on and then replug it and recover and all that stuff. And, like, that 10-minute walk to the restaurant to meet my girlfriend, I was like checking my pocket, and I'm like, well, I was boring. I can't look. And I'm like, well, do I know where this restaurant is? And I was like, I think so, but if I keep walking, like, yeah, similar thing of course, like, our daily lives are the internet. My job has been the internet. And, like, I went down to LA. Well, I went here to LA a couple weeks ago to shoot a show, and the PA's driving me to the set, and she's like, so what do you do? Like, I know you're on the show. And I'm like, oh, I'm an internet personality. She's like, oh, that's cool. What does that entail? And I explained it all. And she's like, cool. So, like, what's the future? And I'm like, do this forever, I guess. Like,
Wars
there's no
in space.
Yeah,
Robots taking over. I think Statue of Liberty buried on a beach, if I remember correctly.
You're maniacs. But yeah, like, you know, like, this is what it is, and this is the deal I've signed up for now. Like, that's, you know,
that's not even it. It's like, who knows what it is? Right now, it's the internet, and that's your entree, if you will. But, like, as we've seen, it leads to television. It can lead to movies. It could go anywhere that you want to take it or that you want to direct it. And that's, imagine what one person could do. You got to fucking combine forces of four plus a fucking producerial force. Off
Kevin.
Camera, unseen, to kind of manifest what it is you're trying to do. Whether it be like right now, it's this with Kind of Funny, and whether Kind of Funny branches. And think about this: one day, maybe a year from now, maybe a couple of years from now, however long it takes, you'll be working on your first feature, making a movie, a collective, something that you guys put together under the Kind of Funny banner. And you'll think about every fucking movie that you've ever seen in your life. And it won't be but a few moments here and there where you'll go like, that's fucked up. We used to watch it, now we're doing it. But you'll be moving forward at such a fucking fast pace and hoping that nobody says, hey, wait, and we thought better of this, that you won't appreciate.
We just Google search Nick Scarpino. He's not doing anything.
Producer, seducer. You know. But you'll be moving so fast you won't have a chance to appreciate it at the moment, but you will. You'll mark it, and then later on you'll
Look
totally
back
appreciate it.
on our deathbed.
Oh, yeah.
Right before lightning striking the car.
Save it for then. Save it for that moment.
Yeah, for me, even like you nailed it with the career thing. Like, just this is what I want to do. Like everything you're saying about you are Kevin Smith, and that is your job. That is all I want, is to be Tim Gettys, and that be my job.
Isn't that amazing?
And just working towards that. And but who that is and why I want to do that, even besides the career, it's the internet was such an important part of my formative years, and I'm at my age. That was my life. I don't know a life without the internet, really. Right. And I can't imagine. I could not do it at all. Like, because even movies and TV and all that stuff, they're not enough for me. Like, I need to know what everyone else thinks about it instantly. I need to be part of that conversation. I need to know every single thing going into it, reading about it, being part of the hype. Like, to me, that's almost more important than the actual movie. And that's exactly, and I love that. That's kind of that. I
Some
define
people
myself
don't
by
understand that. My wife doesn't understand that. Like, why do you
talking about it and like
Yes. And here's something that like a couple of years ago I was like, fuck critics and stuff. And then recently I was like, I don't feel that way anymore. And then there were a bunch of cynical motherfuckers like, you don't feel that way because you got a movie coming out. That's bullshit. This is why I don't feel that way. Because after every episode of Mad Men, I've discovered this slowly over the course of like 2 seasons watching the show. The next day, I would get up, and as I smoked and I'm reading Google News, I would go to Slate.com, and I think it's Slate or Slant. No, what's the other one? Slate, and then, I think it's Slate. They got 2 writers, or 3 even, that just sit there and talk about their opinion of the show. And I would gravitate toward these because I realize I'm not smart enough to process Mad Men. My wife's very good at it too. I'll turn to her afterwards and be like, what the fuck happened? And she'll explain it. I'll be like, wow, that's fucking, like I learned early on. She's a wonderful resource like that. We watched Mulholland Drive and I was like, the fuck happened? And she explained it. But she explained it. She crystallized it where I was like, holy fuck, man. Like, are you fucking David Lynch on the side? How do you know that? And she's good at that. She's really good. She'd be an excellent story editor, man. She understands. She can call shit, watch the TV like this is going to happen, blah, blah, blah. So, fuck, I hit a pothole. What was I on again? So I'm looking at, thank you. You fucking listened.
Colin leans in. Colin
was right there, man. That was awesome. So I've after like, I don't know, weeks and weeks of fucking reading other people's thoughts on Mad Men, I was like, oh, this is like what film criticism is for other people. As the filmmaker, it's difficult because so much of the conversation is about your work. And, of course, you want everybody to like what you do and shit. And there's a lot of blood in the water and fucking, like, film criticism isn't really film criticism. Some of it's real, like, just fucking stab it till it's dead. And it's fun to make
Here's
fun
a funny
shit.
double entendre I make.
Exactly. And I get it. Fucking, like, that's the way the game's played now. It's totally fine. But, it was, I don't know. For me, I forgot what I was saying. Oh, the critical thing.
Everybody talking together.
I sat there going, oh, I get it. Like, this is important to me in some weird fucking way. I have to know what these utter strangers, and then the people in the comments thread, if they all agree that this show we watched last night.
It goes back to that community thing we're talking about. And that's one of the things we were so excited about when, leaving and now going to do on Kind of Funny and Kind of Funny Games, these products where we were very clear at the front, like, we aren't reviewing things.
Yeah, we're not.
Right.
And that's the problem I think you have with critics, is that there's a difference between a critic and someone who's just an enthusiast or someone who's just really likes something and wants to evangelize it a little bit.
Right.
And that's, I think, you probably, because you're a pretty positive guy, gravitate a little bit more toward the guys that aren't like 5 out of 5 or 2 out of 5. It's like, that's not what it's about.
Like, I love Jay Hoberman in The Village Voice. There was a guy named Jay Hoberman who I didn't even know for years whether it was a guy or a woman before I made a flick ever. He was the guy that wrote the review of Slacker that made me want to go see Slacker. Mm-hmm. And when you read a Jay Hoberman review in The Village Voice, you had no idea whether he liked the movie or not. It was almost just an essay about the movie. And it wasn't an essay of like, I walked in and bought popcorn. It was about the movie itself, but it wasn't like thumbs up, thumbs down, stars, nothing like that. It was just a really interesting insight into the fucking movie that would then make you want to go see the movie. They don't really do that so much anymore. Some places still do, but it's much easier, and it's clickbait to, fucking have a headline that's like, this movie sucks your mother's cock or something like that. And you're like, holy shit, I want to read this fucking review.
Cock?
Yeah,
How do they know?
She's so fucking hung. So, it's, but I get it. Like, I'm not like, I certainly am not trying to be like Bill Murray at the end of Scrooge, where I'm like, I get it now. I'm ready. But I understand, like, after reading all those articles, and just because I'm like, I gotta know, am I alone, or did they get something? Yeah. Like, that's what it's all about. It's community. It's about finding a tribe. It's about the same reason that I like fucking made Clerks. Like, let me see if anybody else understands.
Yeah.
Same fucking thing here. Motherfuckers writing about a TV show in depth, one episode. And then I think in Slate, it's like 3 people write 3 separate pieces and all comment on each other's. But that's them throwing a message out there. Like, that's the exact same thing that I do. It's just the other side of the playing field, so to speak.
I think that's so important too. Like when you go to a movie theater, like the instant you leave that theater, you're just talking about the movie. You're talking about what we just saw, how you feel about it.
That's the best part.
And no matter how bad the movie was, you might just say, "Oh, I hate it," but here's why I hate it. And that's like you get an actual thoughts put into that and all of that. And I feel like a lot of what we're doing, what we want to do, is have that movie conversation, but about video games, about comics, about TV shows, and all that stuff to give the community and the people that avenue to have that conversation whenever they want.
Right.
Man, my wife likes seeing movies by herself, and I can't fathom it. I cannot fathom walking out of a movie theater and not being able to turn to a good friend of mine and say, "What did you think?" Or like, "Wasn't that the coolest thing you ever seen?" Or the biggest piece of shit, or whatever. You know, that's just to me part of the process. It doesn't stop when the credits start rolling.
Dude, there's a whole industry of people that sit around and talk about sporting events while it's going on,
Yeah.
after it's over, in advance of it happening. There's a whole industry where people are like, I'm putting together my own version of the draft, like, and this is my happy place in life and shit like that. Sports, when I was growing up, was treated so seriously, like almost that as if it was real, as if it was important, like being a doctor or, you know, fucking somebody saving lives somewhere. Like, this is a real credible fucking profession and shit. And it absolutely is a credible profession and whatnot. But it was treated like religion and a very realistic thing, whereas movies were like, oh, yeah, I go to the movies on the weekends and shit. Now we live in an age where, like, movies and pop culture, comic books are on equal level with sporting events. Like, you know, when
Hear that, Colin? Equal level.
Very much so.
Your hockey.
Well, I mean, hockey, fuck. It's, you know, nobody loves hockey more than me.
Yeah,
but
you're
like,
in a weird company to complain about my passion for hockey.
it's hockey has that, you know, they don't have the numbers of baseball and fucking football, but they are all heart. Like one of the last great sporting organizations that is all heart. Like, even though salaries are, you know, still kind of up there and whatnot, but not nearly as aggregate as they are with other sports, you still see that they do it because there's love for the game. It's not just cynical, like, this is our business and blah, blah, blah. It's still something that's, I don't know, pure.
The fact that there's still goons there. The fact that there's still goons means a lot.
Yeah, I don't know how else to describe it. Like, heart is still in that game. And I'm certainly not saying baseball has no heart, football has no heart. Whatever look, it's very difficult, those games, particularly fucking football and shit. It looks hurty as fuck. But there's something about hockey which looks fucking way more hurty than any of those sports. That is so goddamn pure, even though it's a business and shit. There's still something at the heart of it that is heart, not just a fucking game. That dog loves you, man.
Yeah, you know,
Fell asleep on your lap.
I'm used
Never
to it with
happens.
Portillo. Oh, every time we do a podcast, my wiener dog's in my lap, so I'm totally.
She senses it. She's
Yeah.
just like, this is my bed. But it's weird. We live in a wonderful age where, like, you can celebrate movies with chatter as much as they celebrate sports. It's just as valid. Sports people used to look down on sports enthusiasts. Used to look down on fucking movie enthusiasts, but now we have just as much credibility and just as much lobby, and you can go just as far out of having a conversation about some fucking thing you just watched than you can fucking talking about a sporting event that you just watched, man. People make a living. Chris Hardwick makes a living out of fucking talking about a show we all just watched.
Yeah.
You know, it's
mean,
like, that's where we are now. That's
It's all
awesome.
the same circle of what we've been talking about on this show in being part of that community and why Mallrats worked for me, right? Because nobody was talking to me about that. I was the comic nerd of my group of friends, which was isolating. And you know what I mean? When the internet came around, I was in those fucking AOL chat rooms and message boards and, like, you know what I mean? Like, let's talk about it. Let's fucking talk about this new issue of Superboy or Young Justice or whatever. I want to have a conversation. And now, you know, you mentioned a second ago, like, there's a lot of negativity on the internet, right?
Always.
And we've done on this show before a topic of, like, would the world be better without the internet or all these different things. And, like, I stick with it that, like, even though the negativity is what we put out a lot of times, or people put out, the positivity of being able to sit there and just hashtag anything you fucking care about, and you will find people talking about it and be able to get part of that community and not feel so alone. That's what's awesome.
Pump your passions and kind of stand there going, this is what I love. This is who I am.
Yeah.
In terms of the negativity, you know, look, the anonymity affords people that kind of negativity, and I don't like, you know, I'm no expert, and they'll maybe study it down the road, but feels, even the internet, shitty fucking people on the internet, man, feels like a fucking valve of some sorts where I'm glad that exists.
Sure.
For them to go and be like, fuck life and fuck you. I tweeted and Instagrammed a shot of some dude's Twitter stream today where it was like some fucking like heinous fucking fuck Kevin Smith, and then right after it was like, you know, down with racism.
Yeah.
We need more peace. And
Oh
stuff.
man, this is a week ago. Another
That's the internet.
hour about this. My favorite is when somebody tweeted me, "Hey, you're a fat cunt and I hate you," and then you click through their profile. It's a picture of them and their kid, and it's like Bible verse, whatever,
Yes,
whatever. It's like,
yes,
come on, you don't see
yes.
this, the hypocrisy in this.
But
yeah,
you need that. You need that. That's where they blow off their steam. For whatever reason, it made that motherfucker's day to be able to be like, I'm going to say this, and he might fucking hear it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get this off my chest, and he's not better than me. Whatever the fuck. Maybe it's good that exists.
Well, and most of the time
maybe otherwise we might have a world full of people on top of bell towers.
It feels like whenever I respond to
shooting
somebody who
fuckers.
hates me, and they're like, well, hey, that's, and they're like, oh, I'm so sorry I was having such a bad day. Blah, blah, blah. I mean, they immediately back down
I wish
because
that
like,
was always the case.
yeah, the
Some
majority
people
is.
are just like, no, fuck you straight to hell. And you're like, all right, fair enough.
Well,
I
misjudged
thought
the
we were
situation.
playing here. My
I'll
bad.
talk to
my
you
bad.
later on that one.
But I'll take it, man. Like, I'll take the negativity because, like, it's up to you to turn out the positivity.
Yeah.
Like, you know, if you see an ocean of negativity out there, yeah, maybe you're fucking spitting at that ocean at a wave that's coming at you, but go the other way.
Be the change.
You know, and be the change. And also try to be funny in the process. Like, motherfuckers
Kinda
attack
funny.
me, and I'm trying to, or kind of funny.
Ah, see what we did there, Kevin.
Absolutely well done. Well branded.
Kevin, thank you so much for joining us for this episode.
See,
of
I
the
won't
GameOverGreggy
end it.
Show.
I'll just keep.
Well, we're still doing another one, right? We're
Going,
rolling into one
going.
of your shows, correct?
I just assume that we'll split this one in two.
Oh, we're going to split it in two. All right, cool. You put your bumper on the front of it then. You let people know where to go
I
for the
will.
other
Do
half.
you guys have to go any place or no?
No, we're fucking...
So we can just keep rolling.
yeah, sure. Oh, so we're splitting it here.
Let's use this as a split point.
Perfect. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to move into one of Kevin Smith's podcasts. Which one are we doing?
We'll do. Let me see. With you guys branching off, and let's do Smodcast.
We're going to do Smodcast. So you can go find that, obviously, on the Kevin Smith Podcast Network. They're all over the place. You get them on the iTunes. You get them on the website. Follow you on Twitter. Do you Instagram. Go on Instagram. You won't get podcasts there, but you'll see pretty pictures.
Yes, and then sooner, somewhere they'll lead you to me and the podcast.
Exactly.
Smodcast.com is always.
No, that's too easy.
Yeah.
You got to get all the other channels
There's a
first, like I just
far
did.
more circuitous route.
For us, ladies and gentlemen, you know this is the Game Over Greggy Show. Each and every week, 4, sometimes 5 best friends gather on this table. Each bring a random topic of discussion for your amusement. If you like that, you can get all the shows early over on patreon.com/kindafunny. Or if you don't have the money or don't think we're worth it, we totally understand. You can go to youtube.com/kindafunny. Get the topics broken out one by one, day by day. And remember, we just quit our jobs and really need your support. So go to the new channel, youtube.com/kindafunnygames. Support us there. Subscribe there. Watch all the new content. We have a cool Twitch stream. We're doing a million things. Until next time, it's been a pleasure to serve you.